will be, Stellar has this thing called friend bot, which will fund the account. So if we use QA, the query account command, to actually look at this account, we can see that it exists and it's been funded with a starting balance of 10,000 test lumens, which is great. So now that we have an account, let's issue a transaction. So I'm going to run stc-edit trans1, and that's going to tell STC to create a file called trans1 and to let us edit it in txrep format. So this is just an empty transaction. Let's set a source account, which is the source account A. So if I run stc-pub A, it will output the public key A that we created earlier. If we want to add some operations here, so right now the length of the operations vector is 0. I'm going to set that to 1. And every time I save and quit the text editor, if I've modified the file, STC will reformat the transaction and rerun the editor. So that's kind of nice because it now fills in the fields that I need for operation 0. And it turns out that create account is actually operation type 0, so that's the default. So let's actually create account B here. I need to set the destination to be public key B, because we're gonna create this account B. And I need to give it a starting balance. Let's give it 100 lumens. And in Stellar, all the asset values are in units of 1/10 millionth. So this means I need to add 7 zeros at the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But if I save and quit, STC will rerun this and we'll kind of format this as a comment in a slightly more convenient way to remind me, yeah, this really is 100 lumens that I've put here. So great, we have a transaction and we'd like to execute this transaction. It's just missing a few things. Right now, the fee is 0, the sequence number is 0, and it needs to be signed as well. So nonetheless, I'm going to quit the editor, and I'm now going to fill in these remaining fields using the command line. So STC has this other option called -I, which says to edit a file in place. And there's an option -U saying set the fee and the sequence number to something sensible based on the state of the network. And then finally, I'm going to sign this using key A. And the file, of course, is trans1. So I run this. And if I cat trans1 to see what I've just created, you can see it's a base 64 transaction. Of course, we don't know what's in that, but the whole point of STC is to be able to look at that. So if we run STC, it reformats it in a human readable fashion. And we can see that there's now a signature down here, and the sequence number has been set to something reasonable as well as the fee. So let's now post this transaction using stc-post. And now the network has executed our transaction, which means that if we were to query account B here, we can see that account B has been created and the initial balance is 100 lumens. Fantastic. So now let's create another account. So stc keygen C, empty passphrase. And now that we have 3 different public keys, to make things a little bit simpler, let's set some environment variables. So I'm going to set variable A to be the name of public key A. I'm going to set B to be B. And I'm going to set the environment variable C to be the public key C that we've just created. Let's also create account C. So we just created the account. And now let's use account C to issue an asset. We'll issue an asset called ABC. But in order for anyone to hold that asset, we need to create a trust line. So let's now edit a file called trans2. And for trans2, what we're going to do is we're going to have account A create a trust line. So we're going to need one operation. And let's say that you don't remember exactly what the operation is to add a trust line. You can add a question mark to the end of any enumeration constant. And if you quit and save your file, STC will rerun the editor and will add every possible enumeration constant as a comment to that line. So we can see that actually the command that we didn't remember is called change trust. So we'll just set this to change trust. Again, when we save it, it inserts the appropriate operation body, change trust op. The asset now is going to be ABC, but remember, an asset needs to have an issuer. So that's going to be C here. And we need to give the trust line a limit. And here, the most useful values are very high values. So I'm just going to use 0x7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's basically the highest possible 64-bit signed number right there. So we have a very high limit on this trust line. Fantastic. So now we do the same thing as before. We're going to edit this file in place. We're going to update the sequence number and fee, and we're going to sign it with key A. We don't actually need -sign if we specify -key. It's implicit. So we've now created this transaction 2, and let's post it to the network. Okay, success. So if we now query account A, we can see that there's now this trust line here for this asset ABC with issuer C, and it has a very high limit, but the balance is still 0. Now let's say we want to do the same thing and create the same trust line on B for this asset. Well, we could, of course, just fire up the editor and do what we just did, but the whole point of STC is that it's easy to script things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the transaction 2 we just created as a template. If I run STC with -z, it says 0 out the list of signatures. So we're going to print this transaction, removing the signatures, and then I'm going to use the Unix sed command to replace account A with account B. And then I'm going to run STC again with -c, which says compile to base 64. I'm going to say -o, put the output in a file called trans3. I'm going to say update the parameters. I'm going to say sign it with key B this time. And then instead of a file name, I'm going to specify just a -sign. And that says use standard input as your file. So if you do this, it's going to create a file called trans3. And if we use STC to decompile that, we can see that it's just like the operation we did before, adding a trust line for ABC here, except now the source account is actually account B. And actually, if you'd like to, you might be looking at this and say, yeah, I can't remember which source account this is. So let me show you another trick, which is you can edit a file in your home directory called config stc test.net, and we're going to add a section called accounts. And here, we're going to basically give nicknames to these accounts. So for the first one, we're going to call this account A. The second one, we're going to call account B. And the third one we'll call account C. And now, if we look at transaction 3 again here, you can see that STC has helpfully added a comment reminding us that this is actually account B. Okay, so let's post this. And once this succeeds, both A and B will have a trust line. So now let's actually issue the asset, and only account C can issue the asset. So for that, we're going to create a transaction called trans4. And the source account now is going to have to be C. And in order to create this asset, we have to send a payment. So we're going to send a payment to destination A. And how much do we want to, well, first of all, the asset is going to be ABC : the name of the issuer here. Oh, by the way, if we save this, it'll remind us that, yes, we got this right. This is account A. How many should we send? Let's say 1,000. And again, we have to add 7 zeros to the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But when we do, STC helpfully formats this in a way that makes it easier to count the zeros. Okay, STC, edit in place, update, sign with key C, transaction 4, and post it. So if we now query the state of account A, we can see that it had in the balances line here, it actually has 1,000 of this unit ABC. Now, account C is actually issuing assets, so we might care about its security and worry about that. So one thing you can do is you can make an account multisig. So let's generate another key called C2. Maybe this time I'll put a passphrase on it and set an environment variable C2 to this. And now let's create a transaction 5 where we're going to make C into a multisig account. So here's the name of account C, If we save it, STC will remind us of that. And we're going to use an operation called set options, which we saw before in my talk. And there's 3 options that we're actually going to need to change. One is the medium threshold, but also the high threshold, and we're going to need to add a signer to this. So the signer that we're going to add is going to be account C2, and we're going to give it a signing weight of 1, and then we'll set a medium threshold of 2 and a high threshold of 2. The master key by default has weight 1. So if we set the thresholds for issuing operations to 2, and both the master key and this new key C2 have weight 1, then we will have created multisig. So edit in place, update, sign it with key C, transaction 5. If we now post transaction 5 and look at the state of account C, we can see that there are now 2 signers, signer 0 and signer 1, each has weight 1, and the thresholds are 2. So now let's say that we want to replicate what we did before, this transaction 4, where we sent some of this ABC asset to A, but instead we want to do that to B. So we're going to edit and substitute, translate A to B, and STC, compile, update, sign this with key C, and put the output in trans 6. And we're going to use minus standard input. So now we have this trans 6, which is doing the same thing we did before, except it's sending the payment to account B instead of account A. So if we post this, what do you think is going to happen? It failed because we enabled multisig. So we actually need to sign this with key C2 as well. And now, if we post the transaction, success, we have sent this ABC asset to account B. So that is so that's basically, I hope, has given you a sense for how you can use STC in practice to do things that otherwise you would need to write code for. And I've left you with some links. I think we'll probably put the slides online, so you'll be able to access these links. I don't know if we have time, but if we don't have time for questions, or either way, I'll head over to the dev discussion salon afterwards if people want to come and ask me questions about this.
Yeah, David, that was fantastic. We don't actually have time for questions right now, but as David said, he's going to head over to the dev area salon. We have a lot of questions that came in. A lot of them are very specific. There are also a few general ones. I think there's a lot of interest and people have a lot to ask. I guess my question is, if someone, what is someone's next step? If they want to start experimenting with STC, they go to those links and everything that they need is there, all the documentation, everything that they need?
Yeah, I mean, so all the Stellar transactions and operations are actually pretty well documented. But sometimes there's a corner case, right? And you're like, oh, okay, the documentation says this, but it's not quite clear. Is it this or that? So if you now it's like, before it would be a real pain to write a Go program to actually test this out. And with this, you can do it in seconds. Once you're familiar with the transaction format, you can just create the exact transaction you want and see exactly what it does to the ledger. There's other options to query all the transactions for an account, or to hash a transaction. And so you can query what happened to the network later on. Yeah, it's all documented in the STC man page.
Awesome. Well, everyone who has questions, please follow David over to the lounge where he can answer them in real time. And thanks again for sharing that with us. I mean, for me, I could just watch you work the command line all day. It's pretty mesmerizing. And I will say the ability to determine how the network behaves by creating and examining transactions from the command line, that does feel huge. Meridian, what did you think? Once again, we'd love to know. Please take a second, share your thoughts in the session feedback bar at the top right of your screen. Up next, we're going to have Nikhil Saraf, who's going to tell us all about Kelp, the open source market making and trading bot for the Stellar Decentralized Exchange. But first, another break, another quiz, another chance to wow your peers and win some Stellar prizes, pun intended. I will see you soon. All right. It is quiz time. Your question, Meridian, is what is the smallest unit of lumen on stellar? Is it waffle, stroop, or money penny? Submit your answer in the box on the right and hurry if you want to win. The first two to get it right win the swag. I'll be back in a minute with the answer and to introduce our next session.
Hi, I'm Marcelo. I'm a software engineer on the Nebula team, and I have been with SDF since February. What I love the most about SDF is the people I work with. There's plenty of folks I admire and have fun with, and this is the kind of environment that motivates me the most. Regarding the future of SDF, I'm pretty excited about the partnerships we have been fostering. I feel like connecting with companies that are solving real problems really helps us improve the Stellar network in the most meaningful way. As for my team, I'm pretty excited about the Vibrant Savings app. It can literally be a lifesaver for people living in high inflation countries and empower these people to get better financial stability. Thank you.
Welcome back, Meridian. Our quiz question this break was, what is the smallest unit of lumen on Stellar? The answer, a stroop. As David pointed out, it's 1/10,000,000th of a lumen. That's 0.0000001 lumens. Stroops are named after stroop waffles, which were a key part of the balanced diet of the original Stellar devs. Delicious. Now, if you've spent much time looking into or developing on Stellar, you probably know that there are order books built in at the protocol level that track bids and asks and that automatically execute trades when they match. This decentralized universal asset exchange is one of Stellar's most powerful features, and it's part of the reason Stellar is perfectly tuned for cross-border, cross-currency transactions. But with a great DEX comes a great challenge. How do you create liquidity between asset pairs to make sure it's easy to buy and sell when you want to buy and sell? In our next presentation, the DEX liquidity problem and how Kelp helps, Nikhil Saraf, staff engineer at the Stellar Development Foundation, is going to walk you through a trading bot that rises to meet that challenge. Nikhil, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. Hello, everyone. I'm Nikhil, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how the Kelp trading bot can help Stellar solve the liquidity problem on the Stellar decentralized exchange. So starting off, let's think about what is Kelp. Then we'll go into some of the screenshots of what Kelp looks like. Then we'll cover some of the trading templates and centralized exchanges that Kelp is connected with. Then we'll go over some ideas that can help you make Stellar's DEX a little more connected using Kelp. We'll also go over a tentative roadmap, and we'll also show you how you can download Kelp and try it for yourself. So with that, let's jump in. So what is Kelp? Kelp is an automated trading and liquidity bot that allows anyone to create instant liquidity on any supported trading platform. So this is what an illiquid market looks like. As you can see, there are very wide spreads of about 10.25%. That means that if you want to convert from XLM to USD in this case, it means that you would be paying a premium of 10.25% to make that conversion. And if you wanted to go from USD to XLM, you would again be paying another 10.25% to make that conversion. And the second point of an illiquid market is that there's shallow markets. In this case, you can see that there are only 463 lumens available to buy or sell on either side. So that means that you really cannot convert any more than 463 lumens worth of value. So that's, of course, not very helpful if you want to convert, say, 500, 5,000, or 500,000 lumens. As a result of this illiquid market, as you can see on the right-hand side, that there are no trades. So this is not a situation that is extremely desirable. So this is bad. Now let's see what a market can look like if we activate Kelp on the given market. So what we have here is a liquid market created with Kelp. So one of the first few things you'll notice here is that there are a lot more trades, and the spread out here mentions 0.27%. So this, of course, is a lot more helpful. And as a result of that, there are many people trading on this market. So Kelp is useful to allow professional market makers to come on the Stellar network and capture the spreads that people will be taking the offers from them when they want to convert between currencies. It allows casual traders to create automated trading strategies and just automate their trading workflow. If you're an anchor, this is especially useful because you can use Kelp to provide liquidity for your token, allowing people to get in and out of your asset through any other asset. And that's very helpful because in many situations, you have to sometimes find a market maker to whom you have to pay money. to provide this liquidity service. So with Kelp, it is completely free and available for anyone to use. And that is very helpful to get your token off the ground. So a market like this is one that is great for the entire Stellar ecosystem. So let's go over some of the features that you have available in the Kelp trading bot. So first off, it's integrated with over 100 centralized exchanges. You have 5 trading templates out of the box with configuration files that allow you to tweak the various trading templates. If you're a developer, you can code up your own proprietary trading strategies as well as your own exchange integrations. So what Kelp really gives you is the platform in which you can communicate with the exchanges and manage your orders and all of those things, whereas you just need to code up the small part that defines how your trading strategy works. Kelp was open sourced in the summer of 2018 under the Apache 2.0 license. It's written in Golang as the command line tool. Now, this is actually quite different from many trading bots that you'll find in the market, many of which are written in JavaScript or Node.js, or sometimes even Python and C++. So Golang, developed by Google, is a lot easier to develop compared to C++. It's almost as easy to develop in as Python, but it's as fast as C++. The GUI is developed using React.js. That is one of the more popular frameworks. So that is also useful for anyone that wants to jump in and contribute to the code base or just create custom front-end components for their own version of the Kelp GUI. And because we use Golang, Kelp is one of the fastest open source trading bots with a shorter than 1 second update loop time. Again, one of the benefits of using Golang is that you can compile your single binary and make it available on various platforms. And we've done that for you on Windows, Linux, Mac, Raspberry Pi, and even Docker. So now let's go into some of the screenshots for how Kelp works. So this is what the Kelp GUI main page looks like. As you can see out here, you can view all of your bots, and you have various additional things you can look at about each bot. For example, you can look at the various balances. You can see the tokens that you're trading, the spreads of each market. You can view the number of bids and asks that are currently available from your bot. And you can even conveniently start and stop the bot from the button that is out here. In this case, you can see that we have 1 bot that is running on the public network and 2 bots are running on the test network. And in these cases, all of the 3 bots are currently stopped. Now, this is what it looks like when we start the 2 bots. So as you can see, the spread, which was previously -1 in both of these cases because there was no market that existed, has now gone to 0.001625 of a spread in each of these markets. Of course, as you can see out here, these are all test tokens, but it's as easy as just clicking the start or the stop button to turn liquidity on or off for your given market. Now, when you click the bot name, you go onto this details page. As you can see on the top right corner of the screenshot, it says read only. So when you're on this page, you're not concerned about modifying the configuration of your bot. And at the same time, you can view the entire configuration of what the bot is actually going to be doing under the covers. So this is especially useful if you have multiple trading bots and you want to know what each one of them is doing. Now, when you click on the edit bot or the new bot button, it takes you to this screen where you can do various things such as updating your secret keys, setting the assets that you want to trade. In addition to that, you can also edit the price feeds for each bot. So out here, as you can see, we've selected the centralized exchange category of price feeds. Within that, we've selected Binance via the CCXT integration. And within that, we have chosen the XLM USD market from which to pull the price feed. Out here, it says that the price is 8.139 cents when we're pricing XLM. When we're pricing the CI test sample token, we're currently using a fixed value of 1.0. In this screenshot, the intention here is to mimic the XLM USD market. In the box below the price feed, we have certain things that make it easy for you to understand exactly what price the bot is going to use when it trades. So we have a sentence out here to make that easy, which says, you are valuing 1 unit of XLM at 0.08139 units of CI test and the issuer. We also have the ability to specify the number of levels that we want for the depth of the trading bot. So if you think back to the example where we had an illiquid market and a liquid market, in this case, we have one level. We actually have one level below that as well that is not part of the screenshot. But if you wanted, you could set, say 20 levels, and you'll get 20 levels of depth. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this bot, and this is kind of visible in that little round button that you have on the right side of the price feed, the refresh button for the price feed. Now, this is not a static price feed. So every time the bot runs, if you update it every 5 to 10 seconds, it's going to pull a new price from the exchange, Binance in this case. So your bot is always up to date with the latest price, as opposed to a price that you set now and it never changes. So once you have the bot running, you don't really need to worry about whether the bot is getting the correct price. And this is an example of how you can use a dropdown to select one of the various currencies that are available through the CCXT exchange that we have set up. Now, we have some advanced settings that is not recommended for the new user to Kelp, but once you get a little more familiar with the GUI, there are various things that you can configure. So for example, you can update the interval time that the bot runs in. In this case, we have it set for 60 seconds as an example. We also have the randomized tick interval delay, and that's specified in milliseconds. So what this allows you to do is, if you're concerned that someone is going to try and game the market on which you are trading, because they see that there's this bot that updates the market orders every 60 seconds, you can actually use this randomized tick interval delay to specify a random additional time that is used to place the orders. So it somewhat makes it feel a little more organic rather than being done by a bot. And we have a few configurations like this throughout some of the various trading templates that we have in Kelp as well. We also have this feature called the maker-only mode. So what this ensures is that your trading bot does not consume liquidity from the exchange, and you just make orders. Now, this, of course, depends on the exact trading strategy that you want and your thesis around why you're building a strategy in a specific way. So this is one feature that you can avail of. And one reason you might want to do this, for example, is the difference between taker fees and maker fees on various exchanges, which of course on the Stellar decentralized exchange is one very low fee. So this is that use case is not super high priority on the Stellar exchange, but might be if you're using this on other exchanges, which I would like to point out that currently the GUI is experimental and only works on the Stellar test network for now. But the intention is in the future to make it available on all the centralized exchanges that Kelp is available. We also have the delete cycles threshold, which allows you to provide some tolerance of failure into the bot. So say, for example, if you have rate limit issues, or you have other network issues, or any other issues that might crop up in the process, this number of cycles that the bot is willing to withstand is a threshold that allows your bot to take in certain failure conditions. And as you play around with the bot, it might become useful to experiment with this value to make sure that the bot is running for as long as you want and doesn't crash on small failures that can be easily overcome. But at the same time, that it doesn't, it's not too resilient to failure to when you actually want to be notified, it is unable to notify you. So you would need to think about how to set this value after playing around with it. We also have this ability to toggle on the fill tracker feature, which allows you to track all the trades that the bot is making into a database. And it's really as simple as clicking this button to enable it. As you can see at the bottom, we have this section on fees. So that allows you to specify using the fee stats endpoint exactly how you want Kelp to go around setting the fees in the cases where there might be price surges for fees on the network. So this really allows you to get a lot of fine-grained control over the behavior of the bot. So that's it for the screenshots of the GUI. Let's go into some of the trading templates. So we have 4 broad categories of trading templates available for users of the Kelp trading bot. The first one is the AMM category of trading templates. This has 2 templates, the first one being the balanced strategy, and the second one is the pendulum strategy. So both of these strategies in general price tokens based on their relative demand to one another, and it lets the market surface the true price. This is very much equivalent to the general concept of AMMs that you find in the crypto world. For the mirror strategy, what it does is it mirrors the order book from another exchange, effectively providing exchange arbitrage by porting liquidity from more liquid exchanges onto slower exchanges such as the DEX, which has a 3 to 5 second ledger close time. We have the price feed exchange, which is trading template, which is the buy sell template, which is what we went through in the screenshots. This creates bids and asks using a price feed and spread. You can make a market based on a dynamic price feed like we went through. We also have an execution strategy called the TWAP strategy, which stands for time-weighted average price. So this allows you to execute trades closest to the market price. So an example of this is that if you wanted to sell X amount of tokens over the course of a day, you could use the TWAP strategy so that it spreads out your sales over the course of the day. Now coming to the centralized exchanges. Kelp was initially developed to trade on the Stellar decentralized exchange. But what we realized is that there is a need to integrate into various exchanges for reasons like supporting the various price feeds, as well as things like the mirror strategy that deal with the order books on other exchanges to pull in liquidity, as well as to use Kelp itself and get the exact same interface that people are used to trade on centralized exchanges directly. So some of the exchanges that we've integrated with are Binance, Poloniex, Kraken, and over 100 more. So all of this is possible through the CCXC REST Unified Crypto API that gives us access to all of these exchanges as an exchange gateway. Now that you are familiar with how to use the Kelp automated trading bot and the various trading templates that are available and the full capabilities of Kelp, let's go over some of the ideas of how you can use Kelp to make the Stellar decentralized exchange a little more connected. So one of the first suggestion is that you could use price feeds from centralized exchanges to place orders on the DEX. So with this, you will have the prices on the Stellar decentralized exchange for crypto assets potentially more in line with external prices, so that the Kelp is the Stellar decentralized exchange is more up to date with the actual prices. Kind of similar to a price oracle. You could do something similar and use price feeds for fiat sources to place orders on the DEX. So if you're interested in making one of the markets or trading on one of the markets where you feel like the fiat assets might be mispriced, or you just want to provide liquidity, using a price feed source is a great strategy that you could use, obviously after experimentation. You could use a mirror strategy, trading template to mirror crypto markets from faster centralized exchanges onto the slower decentralized exchange, capturing the spread between the stellar decentralized exchange and centralized exchanges. And this is something that you could potentially do for any asset for where you can find a backing exchange to offset your position anytime someone trades against you on the stellar decentralized exchange. Using the balanced and the pendulum strategy trading templates, you can create an AMM between same fiat pairs such as variants of USD, Euro, NGN, or BRL. Now, I would like to say that none of this is financial investment or trading advice. Please do your own research before deciding to use one of these trading templates and ideas. So now let's talk about the tentative roadmap for Kelp. So the Kelp GUI RC2 was released. It will be released around December 2020. Along with that, in February 2021, we intend to host the Kelp GUI as a service for the Stellar testnet. The Kelp GUI v1.1.0 official release will be done around February 2021, along with mainnet support. Around April 2021, we will be adding support for programming trading strategies in Python and Node.js to give you more support for languages in addition to Golang that is already available for you to create your strategies in today. We will also be adding support for trading indicators to Kelp around April 2021. Some of the work that is planned beyond that is a little more open-ended, but one of the goals that we're trying to get to is a strategy marketplace to be available right inside the Kelp GUI around Q3 of 2021. So this would allow people who are using Kelp to exchange trading strategies with one another and find some of the trading strategies that work for them and have a stronger community around Kelp and maybe even foster some conversation and have teams developing strategies to help one another. And with that, I'd also like to say that we do have available a distribution list that people can use. It's kelptalk@stellar.org that people can join. It's a Google distribution list that you can find on the README that you can use to discuss Kelp with other people. We also have the Stellar public channel hashtag Kelp that you can use to connect with other Kelp users. You can use this QR code to download Kelp. And I'd like to say that you should use Kelp at your own risk. If you set bad parameters or market conditions change, Kelp might actually help you to lose money very fast. So please be smart and go slow. So with that, we have some useful links out here for you. You can reach me on Twitter or on Keybase, and I'd like to open up the floor for some questions.
Great, thanks, Nikhil. We have some questions coming in, and I'll sort of ask them as we go, and we'll get to as many as we have time for. I think we have about 7 minutes. So the first kind of category of questions I get are about customizing Kelp. The first one is, can you easily add other exchanges?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and actually one of the more common questions that I get. If you want, so one of the first things that I would suggest if you want to add your own exchange is to look at the ccxt exchange.go file and look at the ccxt library, which is an independent open source library that Kelp uses. If your exchange is listed there, there is a very high chance that it is already supported by Kelp. It may not be officially tested, So if you type the command kelp exchanges, you'll get a whole list of exchanges that are supported by kelp, including those that are already tested. If you want to test your exchange, you can use the existing test that is available. It's in the file ccxt_exchange_test.go, where we have various functions to test whether you can add an order, cancel an order, get order books, all of the great stuff. And if you get stuck at any point, I'm always available to help you out, add your exchange on Keybase or on Twitter.
And how do they find you on Keybase?
Yeah, so Keybase, I'm at Nikhil Saraf. You can just email me, nikhil@stellar.org.
Great. Also a sort of customization question, even more fine-grained. This one's from Mariano. Can two feed sources be configured in the buy-sell strategy? A source for the ask and a source for the bid?
So we have the ability to do price offsets, but not separate price feeds, just in the interest of keeping the strategy itself simple. But it's relatively easy to create your own trading strategies. So you can, for example, you can copy paste the buy sell strategy file and just add a new price feed to that and just modify the code which uses the price feed to set the ask and the bid price.
And so to find that code, it's just in the kelp repo, is that correct?
Exactly.
Great. Next one is also kind of about configuration or customization. And I'm not really sure what the answer is, but it's from Alex. Could kelp be used in the personal finance domain, such as for automatically rebalancing a savings portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. So, so just to clarify, I'm assuming that's related to like a stock trading portfolio, right?
I would guess. I don't have access, actual access, real-time access to Alex, but let's just assume so.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. So kelp is actually written in a very generic way that allows you to connect to not just crypto, but as we went over, even fiat. At some point in the future, we might be adding support for Forex exchanges that you can use with as a backing exchange. With that, one of the things that we could add is also integrations with a stockbroker account. So you could use that to trade stocks, or maybe even trade with DStock that is issuing stocks on the Stellar Decentralized Exchange. And using that, you can create a custom trading strategy if you wanted to rebalance your stock portfolio at any interval that you might imagine, because at the end of the day, it's just code. And there's like just a few, maybe 100 lines that you need to add to create this custom trading strategy, because the integrations, everything else is taken care for you with kelp.
Great. And one final question about customization. Can I code up a technical indicator-based trading strategy and run it using kelp?
100%. So I've not actually added support for trading indicators yet. If you go to the slides on the roadmap, that's something that's on the books to be done in around April 2021. But if you wanted to add something, that's very easy to add. You can use a library that gives you access to trading indicators, or maybe pull it from the exchange itself and use that. We actually do have a template to create your own trading strategy in the kelp GitHub directly. So if you go to pull requests and you search the word template, we have a template strategy that you can use that is commented very well to guide you and walk you through creating your own trading strategy. So you can do that directly by just forking that repo and that branch, and you already have something ready to go.
Great. A question about the roadmap here. So I think you said that the GUI will be available on the mainnet, on the public network, hopefully around February. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Currently, can you use the command line version for the public network, or is that also only on the test network?
Yeah, great question. So you can use the command line on everywhere. So you can use it on the Stellar test network, on the public network, on centralized exchanges. It has available to it all trading strategies, trading templates that we've mentioned today. It's just the GUI that is experimental, that is slightly more limited for now.
And what was it that motivated you to work on the GUI as opposed to just offering this as a command line interface?
Yeah, so there's actually not very many trading bots that have an easy to use GUI. And I think with Stellar's mission of providing easy access to finance to people that don't otherwise have it, I think providing a GUI that is an easy to use tool is key to breaking that barrier between technical and non-technical individuals. And it really shouldn't be just developers that have access to a great tool like Kelp. And we want to make it available to anyone and everyone that wants to use it.
Yeah, that's an amazing idea. Taking something this powerful and making it so that people who don't have a ton of developer chops can use it is like really an important way that Stellar, reaches out beyond just a very small group of people to sort of impact the real world. And I think that's all the time we have for questions. I just want to say that even I've used the command line interface, and I'm not super comfortable on the command line, but all the documentation there makes it really, really easy. Even if you're pretty much a novice, you can actually learn how to run Kelp just using the instructions that you find in the GitHub repo. It's pretty easy to access. So great work on that, Nikhil.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for talking with us. That was fascinating. I also know a lot of people have been downloading and deploying Kelp in 2020, which is amazing to see. It's definitely an intuitive way to get in there and make markets. And markets made make for a happy DEX. Meridian, your turn to tell us what you thought of that session. Click the session feedback bar on the top right, share your insight. All your feedback helps us do better. Now in a minute, Lee McCulloch is going to tell us all about a new method for managing and recovering keys that makes it easier than ever to build user-friendly apps on Stellar. But before that, a short break, and of course, another quiz. See you in a minute. Welcome back. It is quiz time. The question today, which you'll know the answer to if you were here for Howard's presentation on day one, is in which country was Vibrant launched? Canada, Poland, or Argentina? Again, in which country was Vibrant launched? Canada, Poland, Argentina? I'll be back in a minute with the answer and to introduce our next session. So be back soon.
My name is Katya. I joined Stellar Development Foundation as the head of people and culture in the summer of 2019. What I like most about working at SDF is the people. My coworkers are smart, kind, talented, and supportive. I appreciate that people here are for the right reason, to make this world a better place, to create equitable access to the global financial system. That is why one of our company values that resonates with me the most is camaraderie. We value our teammates and embrace our diversity. Speaking of diversity, that is another aspect that I appreciate about SDF. We have employees with different backgrounds around the world. All opinions matter and are important here. We recently kicked off a diversity, equity, inclusion working group, and I'm excited about the many initiatives in the upcoming year. Thank you.
Welcome back. I hope everyone had a good break. I also want to say, if you haven't already, make sure to check out the Meridian photo booth, which is super fun. And we're having a photo booth contest. The top 10 photos made in the photo booth and shared on Twitter with the hashtag Meridian 2020 will win some sweet, sweet prizes. So get over there, take your best photo, post it on Twitter, use that hashtag Meridian 2020. Speaking of prizes, you can win prizes with our quiz. Just had a quiz question. It was, in which country was Vibrant launched? The answer, Argentina. So Vibrant is a new user-friendly app that currently allows Argentinians to easily deposit Argentinian pesos and convert them to Stellar Network USD tokens. As the Vibrant.cash website says, protect yourself from inflation, no limits. Vibrant is pretty slick. And one of the things that makes it so slick is that you can set up and recover your account using only your email address or your phone number. You don't have to worry about keeping track of your secret key or a convoluted recovery phrase. It's a really simple user onboarding experience, which if you've ever built a blockchain-based app, you know that's a nearly impossible thing to achieve, right? It feels almost like black magic. So how does Vibrant achieve the nearly impossible? In our next session, SEP 30 and the importance of key management and recovery, Lee McCulloch, principal engineer at SDF, is going to walk us through exactly how it works. Lee, take it away. I think that there might be an issue with your audio, Lee. At the moment, it's just sort of playing some sort of loop. And let's see if we can get that sorted out. I mean, we're super excited to have you. Everyone's ready to hear about key recovery. Maybe unmute it for a second. Let's see if it's still doing it. Yes, it is. It has like it's like a loop. It's going ka-donk, 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 ka-donk. So of course, we've made it so far with very, very few technical issues. We're gonna just give us a minute while we sort this out. I'm sure that we'll figure it out shortly. We will be right back. In the meantime, just take a second, think about key recovery, and we'll be back in a minute with Lee McCulloch to tell us all about it. Hey, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but now we are back with Lee McCulloch, who's going to tell us all about a new system for key management and key recovery. Lee, it's good to have you back with us. Thanks for fixing that. And please tell us all about Step 30 and the importance of key management and recovery. You're on.
Thanks, Justin. Hi everyone. My name is Lee McCulloch. I'm a software engineer at the Stellar Development Foundation, and I'm working on improving the user experience that users have or individuals have using Stellar and the businesses have building on Stellar. And I'm going to talk about the importance of key management, how it defines the user experience of a crypto product. I'm also going to talk about Stellar Ecosystem Proposal 30 and what that is, how it can give wallets an end user experience that is comparable to consumer financial products. When we talk about key management, it's critical that we're on the same page about what that means. So we're going to start there. At the store of owning a Stellar account or funds on many blockchains is a key. On the Stellar network, if you have an account, you have a key for that account. But that key doesn't look like this yellow key. It looks more like this. This is a Stellar public key. It's easy to identify because it starts with a G. The public key for an account is also the account's address. So if anyone sends funds to this address, they're going to show up in the account's balance. This is what a Stellar secret key looks like. It starts with an S. On the Stellar network, we call the secret key that defines your account address the account's master key. If you create a new account on the network and you don't change its configuration, your master key is what you use to control your account. If you're using a Stellar wallet today, you might be thinking that you've never seen one of these S secret keys before, and there are a few reasons that could be the case, and we're going to come back to that. It's worth us talking concretely about what it means to control an account. So let's have a look at how a key can control an account. A secret key controls your account by signing transactions. It's similar to how signing a check works. A check specifies an amount to be paid from the payer to the payee, and a Stellar transaction specifies an amount to be paid from a source to a destination. Like a check has a box for signing with a pen, Stellar accounts have signers, and signers add a signature to a transaction to authorize it. The default signer is the secret key that defines the account address, that master key. But a signer is just another key that can authorize transactions for a Stellar account. Accounts can have more signers as well, in addition to or instead of a master key. Accounts can be configured to let those additional signers authorize transactions individually or together. On Stellar, that configuration for what combinations of signers are required to authorize transactions is controlled by setting a threshold on the account and weights for each signer. For example, if you wanted to let either of these signers authorize transactions, you could set a threshold of 1 and give each signer a weight of 1. Only one signature with a weight of 1 would be required to sign for the account. This would be similar to how checks for a joint bank account can be signed by either person. If you wanted both of these signers to authorize transactions together, then you could set a threshold of 2, requiring 2 signatures to meet the threshold. This would be similar to how checks from a business bank account might require signatures by 2 employees. You'll hear people use the term multi-sig to refer to accounts that are configured with multiple signers. But most accounts on the network use only a single key, that master key, and therefore only have 1 signer. Key management is how these secret keys are managed and used, whether it's the single master key or a more complex configuration. Unlike checks, users don't usually manage their keys and transact with them on pen and paper. That's where wallets come in. Wallets are applications or products that help users manage their account. Users might download the application on their phone or sign up on a website. Wallets play a real pivotal role in key management because at the core of a wallet is key management. A wallet's core job is to store a key, protect it, help the user transact with it, and then prevent them from losing it. A wallet is really a user interface for key management, and how a wallet implements key management will define the experience that the user has. Let's have a look at some ways that wallets define their user experience through their approach to key management. So many wallets, they have that master key as the only signer of the account. This means that the account has one key, one signer, and that key is probably stored on the device, such as a phone. It's really easy to lose a key on a phone because phones are easily damaged or stolen. I've dropped a phone in a lake and several toilets and destroyed other ways. It's really easy to lose things which are just on a phone. So wallets help you not lose your key using a few different approaches, which we're going to walk through. For each approach, we're going to consider what responsibilities the user is taking on. The reason that responsibilities matter is because the responsibilities a user has are as much the user experience of the wallet as the wallet's user interface is. I'm going to use these icons to represent some of the responsibilities that a user might have. So we've got writing the key down correctly, storing it safely, being able to find it or not lose it, protecting it from natural disasters, protecting it from theft, and then finally, trusting someone else to do these things for them. The first approach we're going to consider is really the simplest that a product can implement, and that's to ask the user to write down or back up their S-secret key, that master key for their account. This is simple, direct, very easy to implement. It's really the ultimate in be your own bank. You hold the keys, you have 100% control. But with a lot of control comes a high degree of responsibility. That responsibility is the burden to do most of the things that we just listed. The user has to write that key down exactly correct, store it safely, not lose it, protect the key from their home burning down, protect it from people who just might stumble on it or find it and then steal it. The only thing that this approach doesn't require of the user is to trust someone else to look after that key. If a product uses this method with the wrong demographic, users may drop out during onboarding purely because writing the key down is inconvenient or confusing. In the worst case, users who are not equipped to implement this high degree of responsibility may complete onboarding, then experience loss. And that experience may create feelings of distrust, fear, or dislike towards the products, brands that didn't really set them up to succeed. We've all heard stories of lost keys and stolen coins, and we don't want that experience for our users. Another similar approach that addresses some of these shortcomings is the use of mnemonic phrases or recovery phrases. So they're 12 to 24 word phrases that can be used to derive a secret key. This approach is really popular. They're easy to write down, they feel friendlier. But if this is the only method for account recovery, it suffers many of the same problems as the S-secret key. An account holder is still writing a key down on paper and hoping that it won't be lost or stolen. It's 2020. We've been told for a while now not to write down our passwords, and writing down an S-secret key or a recovery phrase is much the same. For users who are equipped to protect the key themselves, these two approaches might be great. And if you're a product developer that's targeting this type of experience, that's great too. However, we know that products sometimes pick these options because they're simpler to get started and not because of an alignment with their users. Products using these approaches could have really slick user interfaces inside the product, but the user experience of the product extends out into every way that the product impacts a user, which includes implementing these responsibilities. If the user has to protect the key outside of an app in the real world, that's part of the user experience. If the user fails to do that well, that experience of failure is part of the experience of the product as well. So let's move on to some approaches that require, see what we have there. Some products are at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to key management. These products, they store and manage your keys for you. form that give you confidence they really are holding those assets for you. Products like this can create any user experience that they want because the product can absorb key management for the user. They can offer familiar authentication like username and password or SMS codes, and they can offer account recovery like reset your password or identity checks like verifying your passport. For products where the user manages their own keys, getting that same user experience is desirable, especially if the product is targeting end users who don't have the capability to protect their own keys. One way that products attempt to do this is to change the thing that a user needs to protect from a key into a password. In this setup, the key is encrypted using a password that the user enters into the wallet but is never shared with the server. The wallet server is not able to use the key because it cannot decrypt it. This may feel more familiar to a user because we're already accustomed to remembering passwords for our email and our online accounts. The user experience may appear to be similar to that of a traditional financial product, but because a secure encryption password is required that can't be shared with the service, this approach suffers some of the same problems as with the secret key or the recovery phrase. If the user forgets their password, there's no forget password feature that lets them just quickly reset it or get a new password. So their account will be lost. All the responsibility is on remembering it and protecting it, and that responsibility is still on the user. This approach on the surface appears to have a smooth user experience, but when the user chooses a weak password or loses their password, the experience can still be heartbreaking. So if we reflect on the approaches that we've discussed so far, the approaches requiring a low degree of responsibility are the solutions that manage the key for the user. The responsibility is really converted into trust into the product or the third-party service. The approaches that require many user responsibilities are the solutions where the user manages their key, their own key. And the innovations that attempt to make the user experience better don't actually take that many responsibilities away from the user. At the Stellar Development Foundation, we've been exploring how products can change the user experience without shifting trust into a single entity. We've been exploring how we can leverage the multi-sig features that are built into the Stellar network to help us here. Multi-sig is that feature we looked at the beginning, where multiple people can sign transactions in the same way that multiple people can sign checks for a bank account. So that exploration so far has led to the CEP30 account recovery protocol. CEP30 is a Stellar ecosystem proposal. That means it's a proposal for use in applications that are built on the Stellar network. CEPs are primarily concerned with interoperability. They provide the foundation for products to connect or interoperate to leverage each other's network effects. CEP30 specifically defines an interface that sits between wallets and account recovery servers. It's an approach to key management that's focus is on making the user experience of a wallet as user-friendly as possible and more akin to traditional consumer financial applications that non-crypto users are familiar with. Its goal is to give the user the option of giving up some of that responsibility without giving any single entity control of the account. So a wallet that implements CEP30 does many of the same things that other wallets do, but instead of backing up the master key, it helps the user to get a new key when they need it. It prevents the user from losing their account and not their key. The user's Stellar account doesn't change, its address stays the same, but the user's signing key changes. So CEP30 defines an API that a server implements and that a client consumes. That API includes two endpoints, one to register accounts and another to request signatures for transactions for that account. A wallet uses that first endpoint to register an account with the server. In the request, the wallet tells the server what identities are allowed to request signatures for the account. Those identities can be anything from things like an email address or a phone number, login with some other provider, or maybe it's verification of a postal address, passport number, driver's license number, or some sort of national identity document. The wallet authenticates using SEP10, which is a Stellar ecosystem proposal that defines an authentication flow that allows a wallet to prove to a server that it is in possession of an account. It's in possession of keys that can sign for an account. This way, the server knows through SEP10 that the client should be able to choose who can sign transactions for the wallet. In the response, the wallet gets back a signing address that the server is going to use to sign transactions for that account, and the wallet can make that signing address a signer of the account that it manages. The second endpoint is transaction signing. A wallet calls this endpoint with a transaction that it wants the server to sign. It'll do this when it's lost its key, and it needs the server to sign a transaction for it. The wallet authenticates using an identity provided during registration. Once the server confirms the identity is registered with the account, the server will sign the transaction and return the signature to the wallet. So SEP30 is currently being used in one wallet, and that's the Vibrant wallet, which is a non-custodial wallet designed to help users protect themselves from depreciating assets and high inflation. It supports deposits and withdrawals with anchors, stores value on the Stellar network, and it uses SEP30 for account recovery with an independent third party, Lobster. The Vibrant wallet presents a user experience designed for the end user. You log in with a phone number, you don't need a password, and you're not required to back up your key, although it does give you that option. Let's have a look at an example of how Vibrant implements SEP30, which will show us how well it could use SEP30, the two SEP30 endpoints, to support account recovery. We're going to walk through the flow of onboarding a new user, and then we'll have a look at what happens if they lose their phone. So the user experience for onboarding in Vibrant is much like the flow of other end user applications. The user is asked for their phone number and an email address, which will be used as their login credentials. They're verified both by entering a code and clicking a link. The app uses the phone number and the email address to register the account with those two independently operated servers that implement SEP30. One's operated by Vibrant, the other by Lobster. The user is also asked for a couple of things like their name and their username, but really that's it. They're in the app. Everything is set up at this point for them to be able to recover. Let's have a look behind the scenes at what the wallet had to do to prepare the user for account recovery. In these diagrams, our user is going to be Sophia. When Sophia creates an account with the wallet, the app on her phone generates a master key, and that the wallet server creates the account associated with that master key. The master key will be one of those big S secret keys that we looked at the beginning of the talk, and is the red key in the diagram. Like all accounts on the Stellar network, when first created, that master key has one signer with a weight of 1, and the threshold for signing is 1. The app on her device doesn't give this key to anyone. It never leaves her device. Sophia's wallet also generates a second key that we'll call the device key. It's a key that is only for this device to use to sign transactions. In the same way that the master key doesn't leave the device key doesn't leave the device either. Sophia's wallet submits a transaction to the network, making that device key a signer of the account and removing the master key as a signer. The wallet also ups the threshold required to sign transactions to 20 and makes the weight of the device key 20 as well, and the weight of the master key 0. So the master key here now has no control over the account. The wallet then goes on to register the account with 2 recovery servers. Each server has their own key that they generate themselves. Each server is operated independently by different entities. So for Vibrant, we've got Recovery 1, operated by Vibrant, Recovery 2, independently operated by Lobster. The wallet proves to each server independently that it has authority over the account with that SEP10 authentication flow, and tells the 2 recovery servers that anyone who can prove possession of the user's phone number or email should be allowed to request transactions to be signed. The wallet submits a transaction to the network, adding both of those servers as signers on the account. The wallet sets the weight of their signatures so that neither server has independent control of the account. Both servers have weights of 10 and must both sign a transaction to meet the threshold. Each recovery server will be able to sign a transaction at the request of the user, but the transaction is only going to be authorized if signed by both servers. The only individual with independent control of the account is Sophia. So let's walk through the recovery process. Let's imagine that Sophia has lost her phone and she's got a new phone. She opens the app, she enters her email address, she verifies her email address by clicking a link that's emailed to her. She then verifies her identity with a second recovery partner. In the case of Vibrant, this is Lobster. Lobster verifies independently with a second verification email. And that's it. Once verification is complete, each recovery server signs the transaction, and once they've both signed, Sophia's device has control of the account. So let's look behind the scenes again to see what the wallet did to recover the account. Starting from the top, the grayed out phone with the green key is her lost phone that still has a device key on it. Her new phone is in the middle and has no key for the account. Sophia's new phone is going to go through that process of collecting and verifying Sophia's identity. It generates a device key and signs into the wallet. Sophia is signed in, but the new device key is not a signer of a Stellar account. So her device cannot authorize transactions yet, even though it's signed into the product. The wallet app talks to the first recovery server and asks the server to sign a transaction that makes her new device key a signer of the account. Sophia then continues recovery with the second recovery server. Sophia authenticates with recovery 2 independently because the server is operated independently. Once authenticated, the server signs the transaction and returns the signature to the wallet. The transaction is now authorized with a weight of 20, and it's submitted to the network. The transaction removes the old signing key that was lost on Sophia's previous phone so that if somebody finds it, they can't do anything with it, and adds that new signing key that lives on Sophia's new phone. Sophia is now back in control of her Stellar account. And the steps that Sophia followed and the experience that Sophia encountered are similar to other end user applications. The experience the application creates doesn't bleed into Sophia's life in the form of codes or keys to protect or lose that are a single point of failure. Vibrant is really just one example of how to implement SEP 30. And if you're implementing SEP 30, you can choose to give the user more or less responsibility for key management. SEP 30 doesn't require the user to write the key down, store it securely, find it or lose it, protect it from natural disasters, or protect it from thieves, or trust a single third party who has sole control of the account. Instead, SEP 30 gives a product developer options and flexibility to choose the responsibilities that make the most sense for their users. The specification leaves many decisions in the hands of the product that implements it. The wallet consuming the API chooses which identities to set on accounts at registration, how many servers to register with, and how to divvy up those signer weights, as well as which transactions are going to get signed at recovery. The wallet can also choose if SEP 30 is the primary method of account recovery or one of several options. The server implementing SEP 30 chooses the authentication methods that can be used during recovery, like phone, email, physical address, passport, national ID, really anything that they would like. Some of these methods are going to facilitate a fast recovery, and others might take time to verify. Let's have a look at some variations of how SEP 30 could be used. So a wallet could implement SEP 30 and offer recovery phrases as an additional key. This is actually a feature that Vibrant provides alongside its use of SEP 30. It gives the user the option to back up their account on their own by getting a recovery phrase. Unlike other wallets, the recovery phrase is a separate unique key for the account and not the master key. This means the key can be revoked independently. A wallet could configure the recovery phrase to have control over the account on its own, like Vibrant, or take another approach like having it be used in conjunction with a recovery server. In this case, signatures are required from both recovery servers or one recovery server and the recovery phrase. A wallet can also support multiple devices where each device gets its own key. A wallet could deal with lost devices by revoking individual keys. This is great because a lost watch containing a wallet can be quickly revoked, removing its key as a signer without interrupting the use of other devices. Because each device has its own signing key, the source of transactions are also audited. If a user saw a transaction that was unfamiliar, they could identify which device signed for it and revoke that device immediately, or it simply might tell them how the transaction happened. A wallet could also use SEP30 to shift key management to a third party who provides key management as a service. A wallet could do this by giving a SEP30 server signing control of the account. SEP30 can also support some other interesting use cases of account recovery. A wallet could support sending assets to people who are not yet users. It makes it possible for a user to create a temporary account that another user can recover the funds within. For example, if Sophia registers the temporary account with the recovery servers, not only with her own phone number, but with Daniel's too, Daniel can download the wallet, register, recover the temporary account, and then claim the assets within. A wallet could use this feature to facilitate invitations of new users, even new users who aren't on the Stellar network yet. So really, SEP30 is a foundation of many possibilities. SEP30 gives wallets the option to create an experience that's comparable to consumer financial products, while avoiding trust in a single third party who has sole control. But it still provides flexibility to be tuned to different and product needs. SEP30 gives wallets the opportunity to create a great user experience, and great user experience drives adoption. So thanks for listening. If you'd like to read the SEP30 specification, it's a 15-minute read. We've also discussed more of the why behind SEP30 on the SDF blog. If you've got questions, I'm going to be hanging out in one of the virtual lounges at around 12:30 PST today. But I'm also hanging out on the key management channel on Keybase. There's also a thread on the Stellar Dev mailing list about SEP30 if email is more your style. As more products implement SEP30, we expect them to really push the boundaries for how it's defined today. And we're eager to hear of challenges and improvements or different ideas that you might have. So contributions and feedback are much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lee. Unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of time for questions, but it is a lot of the questions that are coming in are basically about, this looks cool. How do I implement it? And I guess one question is like, are there recovery servers out there already that people can take advantage of to implement SEP30 in their app?
So that there isn't like a public SEP30 implementation that's an open API that any wallet can currently connect to. That's a great idea though. That's an awesome idea.
Cool. Yeah, I think, it's really interesting that the sort of power of this feature is hopefully apparent to all you app builders out there. And I think that as there's interest in sort of community enthusiasm and people interacting on those channels that Lee pointed out, I think there's a great opportunity for the whole ecosystem to come together and build out the infrastructure to make it possible to sort of implement these, not only by building out the app side, but also by building out the recovery server side. So best channel, would you say, to sort of get in contact, any of those work that you just mentioned, or is there like a #1 prime place?
Yeah, I'm going to be hanging out in one of the virtual lounges at 12:30 PST, so I'm happy to chat more about it there. Otherwise, Keybase, the key management channel on the Stellar public Keybase.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, go find Lee there. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions. There are a lot of unasked questions, so take them there. Ask Lee. He'll be there in real time to answer them. And thanks so much for that, Lee. I mean, I think, again, this solution is clever. It's simple. I think that app builders out there can really help them create user-friendly apps in a new way. And I think key management is one of the biggest challenges in blockchain, because if you do it wrong, it creates a huge obstacle for users. You could sort of imagine if that wasn't an issue anymore. So except 30. Pretty amazing solution. Meridian, what did you think? Please let us know using the session feedback bar at the top right. We really love hearing from you. Up next, we're going to have our final session of day 3 with Tyler Vanderhoeven, and I think the title says it all. Did somebody say smart contracts? But first, a short break and the final quiz of the day. See you soon. All right, everybody, it is time for the final quiz of the day. So Jed McCaleb is the co-founder and chief architect at the Stellar Development Foundation. And a while back, he famously issued an asset on the network in part to show just how easy it is to issue an asset on the network. Your final question of the day, what was the name of the asset that Jed issued and sold on Stellar? Was it Hug, High Fives, or Corn? I'll be back in a minute with the right answer and to introduce our final tech session of the day. Welcome back, welcome back. The final quiz question of the day was, what was the name of the asset that Jed issued and sold on Stellar? The answer, Hug. Now, you can actually redeem it with Jed for a real world hug. I'll have to do some digging to find out if anyone ever did. I'm not sure. So we've had a great day so far learning about some of the engineering solutions that empower developers to build better on Stellar. We've gone deep into the Stellar transaction compiler, the automated trading bot for the Stellar DEX, aka Kelp, and a new method for account recovery. And our final session of the day really yanks that thread. Smart contracts are a hot topic in the world of blockchain, and our next presenter, Tyler Vanderhoeven, ecosystem evangelist at SDF, is going to give us a progress and process report on a proposal for making them possible using Stellar. Now, it's a bleeding edge that's really pushing the envelope, and it's generated a ton of interest and enthusiasm in the Stellar ecosystem. So it's the perfect way to end our day. Tyler, take it away.
Thanks, Justin. It's fantastic to be here. I am Tyler Vanderhoeven, the ecosystem evangelist at the Stellar Development Foundation. It's actually been a year since I joined the SDF. One of my first tasks when I first came on board was to give a talk at the very first Meridian conference. So it's quite surreal to be back again, now virtually presenting on something that I've been spending a lot of time on over the past year, improving and pushing forward. It's actually, so back in July, I did an engineering talk that we posted on
our YouTube channel around kind of introducing the idea of what we're building. And so today we're really looking at where it's come since then, how you can get involved, and ways that it's changed and improved. I will touch a bit on exactly what it is and why it's important. But if this is all brand new and a bit confusing, you'll want to pair this talk with the one that I gave in July. All right, so progress and process report for the proposal for Turing-complete smart contracts for Stellar. This is actually going to be one of the only times that I say the word smart contract in this talk, and this is primarily because the idea of smart contracts is a bit loaded, and I'd rather not have to swim too much through the definitions or terminology that's around smart contracts, and instead focus more on what exactly we've built and why it's important for the Stellar blockchain. So where we were in July. So when I spent a lot of time as an ecosystem evangelist talking to the community and engaging with applications that they're building or problems that they're having. And so back in early 2020, this idea of decentralized transaction creation, I had an assumption that it was important. We see this idea of DeFi and the ability to kind of create a company or a service in a decentralized way. Presenting that to the Stellar ecosystem seemed like something that was important. There was kind of an assumption that that would be received well. So I started working on a proposal for that, and then presented that in July. And as Justin mentioned, has received a lot of attention and interest. And since that initial proposal and proof of concept, we've kind of grown a bit. The idea with what we're building here with Stellar smart contracts, or Turing complete transaction creation, is that it's going to eventually be a SEP. It's going to be a Stellar ecosystem proposal. It's in a pre-SEP stage, though. That doesn't mean that all the work is private. However, we are doing a lot of our work in public, which I'll talk about a bit in a moment, around a working group that's spending a lot of time thinking through how to best implement this. And the implementation has grown a lot since July. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. Maybe you've seen this slide, bit of a mess, but don't worry, it's gotten even messier. So we're going to kind of go through, not this one, but how this particular diagram has changed over the past few months with Turing signing servers. So where are we since July? So from where we were, we now have a working group. We have a group of folks that have kind of gathered around the idea of decentralized transaction creation. And you can find that team. It's an open team right now on Keybase at keybase.io/team/StellarTSS. And we also have a homepage. And this is probably, if you're going to really grab onto anything from this talk, it's going to be our tss.stellar.buzz homepage. This is where we're keeping track. It was getting a bit hairy and wiry, keeping track of all the documents and conversations that were going on. So be sure and head over to tss.stellar.buzz to keep track and monitor the progress of this proposal. And I think it's worth talking a little bit about, I'm going to go ahead and switch slides here to this mess. Before we dig into it too closely, I think it's worth backing up just a little bit and giving an overview of what we're trying to accomplish with Stellar smart contracts, or what I'm calling Turing signing servers. Very similarly to what Lee just presented with the account recovery servers, we need a method by which we can create transactions, so we can do something in a decentralized way, in a programmatic way, without having to have humans involved on both ends. Within Stellar, you've got decentralized transaction execution. And if we were to take a model that's a little bit closer to what we're getting with Turing, where you have both transaction creation and transaction execution happening. Both, you basically just send a request into the EVM, into the Ethereum virtual machine, and it says, hey, I want to perform some action, and that is a Turing complete program that then performs some sort of action and actually changes or mutates the state of the ledger. So those two things are happening inside of the virtual machine. That's very different than the way that Stellar works, where really you just have transaction execution. You don't have Turing complete logic. You're not able to do whatever you want within the Stellar ledger. You have to follow a very strict set of parameters and guidelines within the structure of the XDR and Stellar core. This is fantastic because it allows you to move very, very quickly. And also to ensure some level of assurance, like here's exactly what's going to happen. It allows you to have transactions that aren't immediately executed, where you can kind of store those things and then move them maybe at a later date. And it also just, again, allows the speed and the cost to be very low and assured at some level. The problem is, or really the thing that we need though, and I think DeFi has really begun to prove this, is we need a mechanism by which we also have transaction creation, because if all I have is decentralized transaction execution, which is incredibly important, we're still missing something around decentralized transaction creation. How do I get a transaction made? And this is where I'm going to take this diagram and begin to break it down so that we understand kind of really what we're trying to achieve and how we get there. At the end of the day, all we're trying to do is give a user access to a Stellar account. So I'm going to use an example of recurring revenue. So if you have a subscription model to something and you wanted to withdraw money at a set interval underneath a certain set of parameters, whether it be amount or an interval every month, or only under certain conditions if they haven't upgraded or changed the parameters of their subscription, how do I accomplish that within Stellar? Because all we have again within Stellar is transaction execution. So somehow we have to create this parameter of a payment outside of the bounds that Stellar might permit us to have. If I might have some really complicated logic for how I want the transaction created, but if I don't have that programmed, I'm going to have to rely on some central third party to do that for me. And so you have the transactions within Stellar, which are composable. You can create them underneath a lot of different parameters. Like maybe I create a transaction that says every month I would like your account to pay me $100. But how am I going to accomplish this? As a user, I don't want to give you access to my account directly, because then you can do a lot of things that aren't just taking $100 from my account every month. You could merge my account away or take all of my money, or add yourself as a signer, do all kinds of things that I may not want you to do. So what the service is then going to have to do is actually to compose a transaction on their end, and then every month send that to me. And then I'll choose to sign it or not. But this is very different than the flow that we get where I can just tell my bank account or my Netflix account to just withdraw from my account every month, and we're fine and dandy until I decide to cancel it. I don't have to sign that transaction every month. And so you might do something like pre-signing transactions. So at the outset, when you first subscribe to this new Netflix, they send you a bunch of transactions, says, hey, here's all of the transactions for the next 20 years. Go ahead and pre-sign these, and we'll submit them every month, we hope. And we won't submit them all at once. So maybe you could do some time bounds or something that would allow a little more flexibility to ensure that they don't submit all of those transactions all at once. But then you get into issues with sequence numbers. And then it's also, if you need to change something like the amount or intervals, maybe you want to upgrade from a monthly plan to an annual plan, all of those transactions need to be invalidated and new transactions created, and it can get a bit messy. And so this idea of connecting Netflix or connecting a service account to my controlled account, or giving them some sort of access to my account, but only underneath a very specific set of parameters, that's one very, very strong use case for Turing sending service. And it was the original one that I tried to solve for. There are other use cases. Another one is insulation from certain regulations where I'm a custodian, right? If Netflix has access to my account, they're a custodian of my account. And so they have to ensure certain assurances around how they're storing my money and how they're making use of it. And I have to agree to their terms and conditions. This isn't decentralized at all. And I think there are improvements to be made here for service providers who want to create really powerful experiences, but don't necessarily need or want to store all the money. They don't want control over your account. They just want to be able to access it under a very specific set of parameters, a la the smart contract. And so understand that while the process by which we accomplish this is complicated, the goal is actually very simple. I just want to be able to give controlled access to an account to some third party. So in this case, the controlled account is the user, that would be Netflix, and the controlled account would actually be me. The way we accomplish this is through a TX function creator. So we have to upload a smart contract. There has to be this, in my case, it would be a JavaScript contract. It could be any programming language, but that is uploaded to several different Turing signing servers through a TX function. So it's kind of like a serverless function. All it is a method, a function that is uploaded as a code snippet to these Turing signing servers. They would then spit out a hash. And what they send back, so when you create this contract, you upload the exact same contract, the exact same file to every Turing signing server. There'll be multiples of these. This is where you're going to get some of that security. So in this case, in this part of the diagram, there are 3 of these Turing signing servers. You upload that same contract to all 3 of those, and then they each send back a signing key. And so this is going to start to sound a little bit familiar to what Lee was presenting with the multi-sig solution that we're coming up with for achieving this controlled access to an account. Each one of those Turing signing servers will send back a key, and then those keys will be added to, they will come back from the request that was made when you uploaded the contract. The response will be a key, and then those will be added to the controlled account in a multi-sig scenario. So let's say, in this case, I want all 3 Turing signing servers to be signers. I might set the threshold to a payment to 3, and then the weights of the keys that I'm adding from these Turing signing servers that I just uploaded the contract to, I'm going to add those with weights of 1 each. And so no single Turing signing server is a custodian of the controlled account, but together they all can sign for, in this case, a medium threshold transaction on the controlled account. But how do you actually get them to sign for a transaction? Well, it's through that contract that you just uploaded. That contract becomes an endpoint that you can then hit via a REST API. You say, hey, I would like to look up this contract underneath any parameters that you might have uploaded, like amount or a source account, or you can upload along with your contract a number of different parameters that might be necessary to actually perform the logic of the smart contract. So those, you hit that endpoint with the parameters, and then an XDR is produced. That's why they're called TX functions or transaction functions. They're not necessarily smart contracts as much as they're just a function that produces an XDR. And because it's the same code, the same contract on every single Turing signing server, it needs to, it should, it must produce the same XDR on all 3 of those. And then each one of those will sign, each one of those contracts, each one of the Turing signing servers with the key that they sent back. They will sign that transaction with the secret key that they've stored, along with the public key that you've added to your controlled account. They will sign that XDR, 1, 2, 3. Each of those comes back. You combine those signatures together on the XDR that was the same across those 3 Turing signing servers. And now you have a valid signature for that XDR. Quite simple to say, but incredibly, incredibly powerful. Simply because now I've given access to my account to anyone who follows the parameters of the contract. So whatever the contract permits is now possible through those Turing signing servers. So in the case of the recurring payment example, now somebody can make a request, but rather than making it directly to my account, they make it through the Turing signing servers to the contract that I've uploaded or that someone has uploaded and that I've added those keys to my controlled account. That request comes in, it says, okay, we look at the controlled account that's coming in. The source account maybe is one of the parameters on the incoming request. They look at that account. The contract looks at that account, says, okay, it's been more than a month since the last payment, so we're going to go ahead and generate an XDR. Each of the Turing signing servers adds 1/3 of the signature. That comes back. It's a valid signature, or it's a valid XDR with a valid signature. The transaction is submitted. The payment is made. Aha, but oh, sneaky, sneaky Netflix tries to make the same request. The request comes into the contract. The contract looks at the controlled account. Uh-oh, it hasn't been a month yet. The request is denied. The transaction is not created and signatures are not added to the XDR and the payment cannot be made. And so you're adding this middle, almost like a firewall in between those who want to access your account and the actual account. And that firewall is programmable, which is something we haven't seen, but is native to protocols like Ethereum. And it is incredibly powerful and important that Stellar has an option for something like that. And Turing signing servers allows for it. And so this is the flow. You make that request in where you have an outgoing request to your different Turing signing servers. They're making that request to the contract. And what comes back is that partially signed XDR going back to whoever is calling the contract, combines those together into a fully valid signed XDR. That gets submitted to the Stellar network on that controlled account. And assuming that the signatures were valid and the XDR was valid, the transaction goes through. The last piece to this, and this is super important, is why on earth would someone run a Turing signing server? Well, the first obvious answer is you need it for your own services, but the reason that this is powerful is that it's not a single entity that's running Turing signing servers, not just you running Turing signing servers, or what have you actually gained. The way that this is accomplishing decentralization is that there's lots of different people, lots of different entities that are running Turing signing servers, and you get trust through not having to trust anyone with everything. And you also get that insulation where no Turing signing server has entire complete control over any single account. And so each of these individual Turing signing servers needs to run a very good Turing signing server and respond to requests. But why in the world would they do that if they're not directly involved in the benefits coming from the computation that they're running on transactions? Well, that's where fees come in. And so fees are charged. Fees are central to the Turing signing server flow, because rather than there being a very limited set of Stellar operations, it's Turing complete. Who knows what these transaction functions are running? And so there has to be some mechanism to recoup the Turing signing server processing powers for them to recoup on those costs and charge those to, in this case, the TX sponsor. This is something that still is quite new. There was a system that I built in place initially where the actual contracts had to include payback logic, but it got a little bit complicated, and it was very restrictive to the ways that people might choose to use Turing signing servers. Again, this is why it's so important to have working groups, people that are actually interested in using the products that you're building, and why our ecosystem is so impressive is there are people that are actually using these and building on these and finding issues with it. And I have a very limited set of resources at my disposal as far as brain power and use case ideas to be able to know if I'm building the right thing or if we've built the right thing. So having a large working group is super powerful for this. And one of the complaints or one of the requests was we need more flexibility in how and who to pay, or who's going to pay these fees to Turing signing servers. So we're trying to come up with a really good solution for this. We've got a couple of really good ideas. Some of them are in flux at the moment, which is, again, if this is something that's super interesting to you, and if getting paid for running services is something that you are interested in, this could be something you want to jump into to see how we're accomplishing this. Right now, the way that it's accomplished is through a TX sponsor, a transaction sponsor. So if any user wants to actually call a TX function, first they have to get sponsored. That sponsorship could be yourself, like if you want to call your own contractor, if you are your own sponsor, that's totally possible. There's no one central authority for these things, so you could set up your own sponsor account. In general, that won't be the case. You'll be providing a service to your users, and the service will be the TX sponsor, and they will allow usage of their sponsor account to their users through a very strict JWT flow, similar to like SEP10. And then that JWT would go into the TX functions and say, hey, this is the request. We have permission to use a sponsor account. And then those Turing signing servers would be signers. They would be additional signers on the transaction sponsor account and periodically would draw money from the TX sponsor. One of the reasons that this is so important that we have this flow rather than just making payments on every single request is that if you have a very popular contract, you can't be making payments on every single request to the actual blockchain, particularly because these could be very, very small. It's even possible, maybe even likely, that fees for running a Turing or running a TX function would be comparable to the actual network fees. So why you'd be paying a fee to pay a fee that's smaller than the actual fee that you're paying in Stellar. And so there has to be a way to kind of have this side net of combining fees together until it reaches a certain threshold, and then you settle on the network. So it could be a really interesting use case for these like fee channels that have been bouncing around maybe a problem without a use case. We might have a use case now for how that could be very useful. So we're looking at that. We're still exploring the best way to accomplish that. Even since this diagram was put together, we've come up with a little bit of a better flow that doesn't involve JWTs, but actually uses signed transactions that are unsubmittable, but at least are signed to prove ownership over an incoming request, to reduce spam and also make sure that Turing signing servers are getting paid for the services that they're providing. And so that's, in a nutshell, Turing signing servers. Obviously a bit of a messy diagram, but a very, very powerful and useful feature that we're building as a SEP into Stellar. Again, I would strongly encourage anyone who's interested, even at a kind of tertiary top-down level, to get involved in the tss.stellar.buzz, to look over the articles and videos that have already been recorded. We've got some really interesting demos to peruse, along with their TX function code that you can actually look through the code that's being run within the Turing signing servers. And then getting involved in the Keybase working group. There are several individuals and enterprises that are working on actually implementing Turing signing servers to see if it's the right solution for this kind of problem. So I would strongly encourage getting involved where you can. And I would love to answer any questions that may have come in through that.
Great. Thank you so much, Tyler. I'm just trying to start my video here. Fantastic. We're getting some questions in, and I think that there's sort of a group of them that are about getting involved. So you sort of just went over this. The best way to get involved is to
go to tss.stellar.buzz and then figure out kind of where you fit in best. The thing that we need the most for this to really reach main level adoption is use cases. So if you've got an idea for like, ooh, I wonder if it's one of those interesting things, like, could Turing signing servers do XYZ? Like, the answer is going to be yes. It doesn't necessarily mean that it should be yes. There are lots of good use cases and bad use cases, but we really need people implementing this and trying to use it and saying, okay, I really would like to be a non-custodian. I would like to explore building a service that utilizes the idea, the concept, the ability of controlled access to an account, without having to actually be a custodian of that. I mean, this is incredibly common. This is the whole point of DeFi. So there's tons and tons of use cases, but we need people that are actually getting involved building those things and then helping to build the protocol out to where we have a lot of strong use cases that are driving forward the protocol to be the right thing so that we can get this to a SEP that's both drafted and eventually active.
Great. And we have a question from Jeremy, and I think it gets at part of the way that this works and part of the way that it doesn't work. Jeremy asks, Jed had mentioned that for security reasons, something like this wouldn't be part of the base protocol, the Stellar protocol. And then he says, is that still the case, and how would that work? So
yeah, go ahead.
No,
absolutely.
You go ahead.
Yeah, it shouldn't. It really can't be part of the core. At least they can't run together. They might be able to run in parallel. And in many ways, this is a parallel running protocol where you've got Turing signing servers, which are running complicated, but Turing complete logic. And the whole point is Turing complete logic. To actually run arbitrary code, you don't know what you're running. And so things might be slow, things might be complicated, things might get messy, and they might get expensive. And we see this all the time with the Ethereum fees just constantly all over the place. And it's hard to build a viable production-ready product when you don't know what your fees are going to be. You don't know if the system's even going to be up. And that can be debilitating if you really want to take your product mainstream, if you're worried about succeeding. And so being able to separate the transaction execution to make sure that that's always quick and always stable, separating that logic out from the actual transaction creation. And that's really important. It's still really important to be able to have decentralized transaction creation. Ethereum has proven that. There's no questions that that's important, but they do need to be separate so that we're still fast and cheap, but we also have the customability, the programmability that's necessary. But creating the XDR should be different from executing the XDR. Those should be different things.
Right. So this is two different systems, right? There's a parallel system where you can create these XDRs and then you can submit them to settle on the Stellar network.
Exactly.
Great. I'm getting a lot of questions about timeline? When do you think it will be ready to use in action, for instance?
As soon as you get in there and start implementing it and help out. I'm going to give a little, didn't even go to college for compute. I didn't even go to college. So the limits of my ability to push this protocol forward are becoming apparent. So I need smart people to jump in, start implementing this, building it, showing where the problems are, and kind of taking over to get this over the finish line. I think through notepads and programming, like I never build something without having a reference implementation. But the problem is then everybody focuses on like the house, when what I'm trying to build are hammers and drills, the protocol of the thing. So I need people who understand that, who help me build better hammers and drills.
Right, or maybe a blueprint, right? Like a blueprint.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the template of the thing. Like we need better tools and protocols. And right now what we have is a pretty solid reference implementation, but we need people that are focused on the tooling and can help push the protocol forward.
I would say one caveat, you do not need a college degree or specialized courses. This is something that is being invented right in front of us by people, who are sort of ingenious and innovative, and innovators. That ability comes from sort of your own curiosity, right?
Especially when it comes to implementing it and using, like we have, if you go to that tss.stellar.buzz, we have an API that you can use right now on testnet. With API, you can upload contracts and start calling them right now. Like we've got an implementation that can absolutely be used and works really well. It's just, it needs to be used so that we know where have we missed something? Where do we still need to shore up features so that we can push it into a SEP that's really quite solid?
And what are you hoping to discover as people use it? What kinds of things are you looking to investigate?
Well, I would say the thing that I really want to see the most is this. So we have open source code, but I really want to see open source opportunity where you don't have a lot of siloed functionality held within individual enterprises. This is something that's actually quite new to the just cryptocurrency space. And I think DeFi is pushing this forward a little bit, maybe not always in the best way, but in a really interesting way of what happens when you're not just open sourcing the code of what you're doing, but actually open sourcing the ability, like templating how to run a financial service in a decentralized way, really sort of turning the tables on, you can provide a service, but not actually have to be responsible for keeping that service up and running. You can put code out there that anyone can run, and it can run that service. Somebody else can run the same service in a different way, or they can run that service underneath their own parameters. So rather than it being individual siloed services that have these features and functionalities, anyone can run those through the templates built by Turing signing servers, where it's just some code, and anybody can get access and actually start running that and provide lending services and these recurring revenue services all these different financial services, but in a decentralized way where there's not one entity that everybody's like asking, can you please sign this transaction for me?
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Tyler. It's definitely amazing to see innovation unfolding before our eyes, and also great to see it's being propelled by ecosystem-wide cooperation and collaboration. If that presentation piqued your interest, I urge you to get involved, join the Turing signing server conversation. This is definitely how open source should work, as Tyler just said. So sadly, Meridian, we've come to the end of the tech track, at least for today. Now, in a minute, I'm going to join Jed McCaleb, founder and chief architect at SDF, and Danelle Dixon, SDF's CEO and executive director, in an Ask Me Anything style town hall. And at 6 p.m. Pacific, Christine Tu, director of business development at the SDF, and Joe Tussin, CEO and founder of Change, will chat about what it takes to build and scale a remittance business on Stellar. Tomorrow, we've got another great day of Stellar programming kicking off at 8 a.m. Pacific with a conversation between Danelle Dixon and Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn and partner at Greylock, about building network effects. Trust me, you don't want to miss that one. So thanks so much for sticking with me. And wherever you are in the world, if I don't see you at the town hall, have a great morning or a great afternoon or a great evening. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Babe. If you are worried about where I've been or who I saw, welcome up into it, my home is Memphis. Don't worry, you know that you got me. Don't worry about it. If you are worried about where I've been or who I saw, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. My home is Memphis. Don't worry, you know that you got me. Somebody told me that this planet was small. We used to live in the same building, on the same floor. We never met before until I'm overseas on tour. Met this Ethiopian queen from Philly taking classes abroad. She studying film and photo, flash, focus, record. She said she working on a flick, cut my click through the score. Hey yo, she loved my show in Paris at Elysée Montmartre and told me I stepped off stage and took a piece of her heart. We knew from the start that things all apart. They tend to shatter. She said, yo, that didn't matter. When I get home, get at her through letter, phone, or whatever. Let's think, let's get together. You think not? Like I went home and forgot. Time passed. We back in Philly, now she up in my spot. Telling me the things I'm telling her was making her hot. Started building with her constantly around the clock. And she in my world like hip hop. She telling me, baby, if you are worried about where I been or who I saw. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it though. Girl, everybody, girl, everybody know. Girl, everybody know. I'ma be right there, right there, right there. I'ma be right there, right there, right there. Yeah. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it though. Alright. Look, I'm the type that's always catching the fly. Sometimes I gotta be out at the height of the night. And that's when she flip and get her some, oh yo, this ain't right. It's like I'm just on the side of you in love with your mind. And I know you got to get your paper, daddy, keep that thing tight. But listen, I need some love in my life. You feel me? Like I was talking to my sister from New York City. She said she noticed about a player and he think I'm pretty. It's like I'm playing boo, you know it just with you I'm staying boo. When brothers keep popping and I don't hear what they saying boo. When you fall out in the world, love, you know I'm still your girl. All these classes I don't really got the time for all the real. When you sweating on stage, think of me when you rhyme. Don't be listening to your homies, they be leading you blind. I can trust her, right? I'm a king for real. Y'all know relationships get ill. She's still telling me, baby, Yeah, yeah. That's right. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it, though. Girl, everybody know. Girl, everybody know. How to be right there, right there, right there. I ain't going nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. Yeah, yeah. Let's make a beat that chickens in that batter, be that cold cat. Whispering, she trying to play you for the fold. Black, listen, if something is on your chest, just make that thing known. Cause I'm not every 5 minutes all up on the phone. Look, the topic of trust is just a matter of fact. That people, they be biting backs and trying to fracture what's attacked. They'll forever be. I'm not on some look, I'm a celebrity. I deal with that real, and if it's artificial, let it be. I seen people caught in love like whirlwinds. Listening to they squad, dealing with girlfriends. That's exactly the spot. They whole world in, lies come in. That's where that drama begins. She like. Kirk Douglas on guitar right now.
All right. Well, wow. Somebody get those guys a glass of water. The Roots just totally brought the house down with that last performance. So what a great way to transition to one of our favorite sessions in Meridian, the Community Town Hall. So I will now hand it over to my amazing co-host, Justin, to introduce us and get us ready for that discussion.
Thanks so much, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. Every time the Roots are playing, at the end, I actually find myself applauding here alone. But I guess together, right? Virtually together. I don't know if anybody else does. It's really a privilege to have them playing. And it's really been a great time for everyone to come together. On the dev track, we've had a lot of great discussions, a lot of great participation, and a lot of great questions. And now, everyone at Meridian, you have an opportunity to ask questions of some of SDF's leaders. I mean, in the spirit of sort of the open source values and SDF's commitment to transparency, we're hosting this town hall. And really, anything's fair game. There's a QA button on the right, which you can use to submit questions, and we'll get to as many as we can in the time that we have. With me today are Danelle Dixon, our CEO and Executive Director. Hi, Danelle.
Hi.
And Jed McCaleb, Chief Architect and Founder at Stellar Development Foundation. Hi, Jed.
Hi, everyone.
So I guess the first question is just, Jed, Danelle, how are you enjoying Meridian so far?
I think it's great. Yeah, it's been going really well. I mean, it's unfortunate it's not in person, but all things considered, I think it's been pretty exciting and a lot of stuff to learn.
Yeah, I love the feedback. We've gotten such great feedback on it. Folks who put this together did such an amazing job with the panelists and all the speakers. They're phenomenal. And then just like the engagement with the attendees, so important and really gets to the open source part of how we want to operate. So I'm thrilled about how this has gone.
Great. Have you had any sessions that have really stood out for you, ones that you enjoyed that you kind of want to talk about for a minute? Jed?
Let's see. I mean, well, we had a good discussion where it was just me and a few other people from the community, which was pretty interesting. It was good to like kind of give answer questions directly from people. It was small, but it was interesting and cool. Yeah.
Danelle, any standout sessions for you?
Yeah, I'm not going to fall prey to that, Justin. They were all amazing. So I'm not going to pick on anyone. We did do a small session too with me with the community. And that was really fun just to talk. Like it was just like sitting there talking to friends. So I love that. But, you know, it's been, I mean, the whole thing, like having the Roots is, and those interstitials has just been kind of calming throughout the whole thing. So it's been great.
Great. Well, questions are coming in now, and this is also obviously an opportunity to interact with the community and with everyone watching. First question is just about engagements. It's from Hans. What can I do for Stellar? I'd love to be a part of the ecosystem and contribute from my end here. What can Hans do?
Wow, it's a great question. I think, Hans, like you can, first of all, like getting the word out about what Stellar can do and what all these awesome companies that are building on Stellar are doing is pretty phenomenal and a great way to do it. If you're technical, obviously, we would love for you to develop and to be creative and innovative for your area on Stellar and to help us to make the platform and the network even better than it is. There are so many ways to just get involved in the community and get involved in the discussions. And I think that whatever your level and your ability to be able to do that is, we just really welcome it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know what you're capable of, but just, you know, there's just a lot of education that needs to happen about Stellar, especially in the crypto world. I mean, it's not really, people don't really understand what Stellar is and how it's different from other things. And so like being able to explain that to people and being able to like tell the story of what Stellar is I think super important, and why it's different from these other protocols out there, I think would go a long way. So
great. And now there are a couple of questions, one for each of you, sort of about how things are different now than when you started. So first, Jed, what are your thoughts on how the community and the ecosystem have grown and changed since you first started Stellar?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously changed quite a lot, right? So I mean, it's been over 6 years now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's matured a lot. There's a lot of people like actually like building real things on the network now. Like crypto in general has matured a lot. So all that's been really encouraging to see. And there's more anchors in the network now. So it's like possible to do other things besides just build anchors and wallets and stuff. So there's other things that you can do now with Stellar, which is exciting. And there's just a much larger, more vibrant community now than in the beginning. And so it's just been great to watch the whole thing unfold. So.
Danelle, for you, is there anything that surprised you since you joined the blockchain world and the Stellar community?
Oh, I think the thing about the blockchain world that I've been in technology for a really long time. I think the one thing is the blockchain world is they're very active and very excitable and very excited, and sometimes in a great way and sometimes in a negative way. So that sort of surprised me a little bit to see it be even more activity and more excitement and sometimes more criticality. I'll say that I think I joined SDF and Stellar at just kind of like the perfect time, because Jed and others had been spending so many years like laying this amazing foundation. And then when I came in, we were just about ready to move everything forward. And so if you just even look at the difference in the network from May of 2019 when I started to today, it's just remarkable. And I'd like to take credit for like me being the one to have done that, but it's not. It's actually the community and all the people that built on it and the foundation that was laid during that time, during the prior, before I got there. And so we've just been able to really build on it. And I can't like express how exciting it is to see the use cases like operational as if it's just like normal operating procedures. It's not like, oh, wow, let's get excited about this transaction. They just happen and they're working, and it's wonderful to see. So I think that so much work has been done in years past, and then this last 18 months, it's just exploded. So it's been awesome.
Great. I have some questions about regions. I know that in your opening speech, Danelle, you sort of highlighted Africa and you highlighted Latin America. And now I've got one person sort of asking what's in store for Europe and what's in store for Asia. Are there projects happening in those continents that we're excited about, that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, I mean, Europe is, every region is different. And that's the thing that's really important, is you have to think about what's necessary in those regions and what the needs are. And we're already seeing, obviously we have Tempo, we have a lot of other projects that are starting to build in Europe. And so I think we're gonna see a lot more anchors in the next 6 to 8 months, even in the European market. And I think that's gonna be able to allow not just remittances from a consumer standpoint, but businesses. So we're gonna see a lot of business activity from there. And Asia is just an area that is so important because the needs in Asia are diverse, and yet there are many, and that there's already such wide acceptance of digital assets. And so what we're going to see some also anchors. When again, like the anchor is like that foundational layer that you need to put to make everything sort of work together. And so we're going to see some of those anchors coming on in the first quarter, and I think that's going to be really helpful for us to really create Asia. I mean, we already do have some really strong partnerships there, but we're going to see even more, I think.
Great. A follow-up question to that, and I really like the way that this one's phrased, so I'm going to read it exactly. It's from Mariano. It says, I still remember my welcome email 6 years later, seeing how it has improved from the SDF perspective. Apart from anchors, what services would you like to see run on Stellar? Onward. That's the end of the quote. It ends with onward, which I like.
Let's see. Yeah, obviously anchors are like the fundamental thing. Like those have to be there kind of before you do much else on Stellar. So like assuming those are in place, then there's just a range of things that I think can start to be developed, you know, all the ways to things like that DStock are doing, where it's just like random equities on Stellar, to like things that like Cowrie's doing, where it's just moving money cross-border for these like businesses. One thing that it would be cool to see is like in kind of gaming, you know, for instance, like a lot of these game companies want to receive like small amounts of money all around the world, and like it would be cool to see some sort of application that addresses that, or like, you know, that use case being served on Stellar. But you know, there's just kind of like anywhere payments are done, you know, once you have anchors in place, like there could be a Stellar use case built on it. So, yeah.
Danelle, any other use cases other than anchors, which obviously are foundational, that you see coming down the pipeline that you're excited about?
Well, I think that, you know, we're going to see more and more of just the cross-border payments, and I think payments for businesses, because the high cost corridors, I think we're going to see that. We've focused on like what use cases do we think are going to be like the top use cases in 2021, and not meaning like the most important, just the ones that we're going to see most often. And I think we're going to see consumer to consumer cross-border payments because of the high friction markets for remittances. And then I think we're going to see more access to financial services, like the, you know, savings accounts and investing in securities like DStock and like what others are offering. So I think that we're going to see more of that. And what Jed just mentioned in terms of gaming, it's sort of one of those when I was in the browser world, like one of the things I always wanted to see were these micropayments being so simple. We see some of this happening with Satoshi Pay, but we see some of this happening with others. We saw some in the hackathon that folks talked about, like, and built applications around that. And I think anything that can allow microtransactions with ease, at such, like, given that the fact that it's so cheap to be able to do those on Stellar, I just feel like that solves a huge need. So I think that's going to come, and we're going to see a lot more of that as well. And that's not going to be like this amazingly unique and creative thing. It's actually solving a real problem that everywhere in the world we have. Like, so I love that use case, because it's just something that it's something on the content side of the web that is like a really important thing to be able to get right to.
Great. And I want to say that specific to gaming, tomorrow in the tech track, we do have a session talking about using Stellar and integrating Stellar into gaming platforms, which will be super excited. It's actually one of the sessions that the community, the ecosystem, voted on. We gave people an opportunity to sort of choose a session, 2 sessions to add to Meridian, and that was one of the most popular ones. So I feel like there are people starting to think about this. It feels exciting and interesting to sort of see Stellar in a different light, or applied to a slightly different use case. I have several questions here about USDC. I guess, Mike, recently we announced that USDC is going to be issuing on Stellar. And I guess, can one of you just tell me a little bit about what that means and about sort of the opportunities that that opens up for developers on Stellar, or for Stellar in general?
Yeah, Danelle, I think you've been closer to this, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that USDC, I think we're going to see them live in the first quarter, and I think the first month of the first quarter. And what I think that that offers is just the real opportunity for us to see a really strong and stable asset that can be utilized for all of these things we just talked about. So you can leverage it to be able to go into your application, so that Vibrant, for example, can leverage it to be able to have this like USD, it's backed the USD asset that's actually, that can be tradable and usable. But there's so many, like, I can't say the use cases that it can be used for, because there are so many, and it's just dependent on what's being built around it. But it will just be available like any other asset. It's really, really important to have a strong USD token. And for us, that was one of the big things we wanted to bring. We already had several that were in the market, but having one that has the brand that USDC has, it's going to be, I think it's going to open up even more opportunities for that. They also have a lot of tools that are available to developers to access their APIs in a very simple way. And so I think that that makes it so ease of use is going to be something that they focus on from their own development standpoint. So there's going to be a model there that we can leverage for other anchors as well.
Great. I have a question from Offo Lobby, which is, what is your view of having P2P lending on Stellar? Like, this is sort of a use case that I know that has come up before, people have talked about. Does it seem like there's a sort of ability to take Stellar and build P2P lending apps or services on top of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly like a lot of P2P lending, at least, you know, if you look at like kind of what Kiva has done, a lot of it is cross-border, right? So like, you know, there's people funding people like in, you know, some part of the world where they don't live, right? And so anything done like that would be like much easier on Stellar. But in general, I think it's a good use case, because, you know, you're collecting money from lots of people that you're just giving it to one person. That person is probably paying back like small amounts over time, and so like all of that is like easierly to track and facilitate on Stellar. So I think it's a great use of the technology. So I'd be excited to see someone build something like that for sure.
Yeah, and I think, wasn't there something in the hackathon that actually, it wasn't so much the lending model, but the peer-to-peer working together to help save? So I feel like there's already ideas around that. And again, it's based on the your regional markets and like what is the need there. But definitely it's something that can be done and should be done.
I got one here from Jeremy. It says, Tyler just had a great talk on the TSS concept, which is Turing Signing Service. It's an idea that they're experimenting with, right, to create smart contracts and then settle them on Stellar. Or they're not exactly smart contracts if you saw the talk, but kind of in the same ballpark. How do you feel about it as a feature on Stellar, or that builds on Stellar, and the use cases it could solve for?
Yeah, so I think we need something along these lines on Stellar. You know, I'm not exactly sure what the exact shape of that should be, but we certainly need a way to enable, you know, enable the things that people are looking for when they want smart contracts. You know, you know, you could do lots of things on Stellar, but inevitably there's like these cases where you kind of need a handle in kind of a bespoke way. And so something like that, I think it will make a lot of sense and kind of be able to increase what you can do on the network. So we're like actively trying to figure what that is out right now. So.
And I think that we also talked about it a little bit. I mean, we're early stage of this, obviously, but like for DEX liquidity issues, and is there something that can be used with TSS for that? So obviously, like DEX liquidity is something that we care about and we're focused on. So if this is another thing that can help solve that, we would love to be able to look at that.
Right.
That actually leads right into another question that I have here, which is what are the challenges that you see for Stellar in 2021?
Well, I'll start because that's an easy one because I just said that. The DEX liquidity is something that we want to be able to take that challenge on more directly. And it's part of our strategy for 2021. I think what we did our strategy work and started in September, and everyone in the organization participated in like how we pulled this together. And we did some teams and tiger teams around this. And one of it was on DEX liquidity. Another of it was on like, what are the risks to the network? And so, like these risks that are existential that are out there, and we have to think about that. So it caused us to be more mindful and to think about, do we need to put a lot more testing and a lot more mechanisms in for that at the outset so that we can make sure that we're protecting against any kinds of security flaws or bugs that come into it, just in any software development. So I think that the DEX liquidity one is the largest risk that we saw that we need to be able to solve and that we're going to focus on for 2021. Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's kind of the same thing that it's always been. It's just how do you get this network started, right? I mean, this is the whole problem that crypto at large has, is that these things really depend on lots of people kind of coming together at the same time. And so our challenge has always been is like, how do we get enough people to the table at once to make this network useful? And I think we have a pretty good solution with Vibrant and a couple other efforts. But so yeah, just the kind of the risk or the challenge there is just like, will this actually work? And like, how do you make this all happen at one time? So.
Got a question here from Lisa, which is, compliance costs are the barrier for job creation efforts in open source platforms. What is SDF doing to help? I guess more generally, compliance, a lot of the companies that build on Stellar, they have to worry about compliance. Is there any strategy that we have in place or that SDF plans to have in place to sort of help companies deal with becoming compliant with the challenges involved?
Well, I think that, the network itself has the compliance tools in it. I think that the beautiful thing about using financial systems financial institutions that already exist is most of them are compliant with whatever regulatory body they need to be compliant with in their region. Stellar allows them to be able to set it up and set the infrastructure for themselves up in a way that makes the most sense from a KYC standpoint, AML standpoint. They can use the tools when they feel like they need to use the tools from that standpoint. So I'm not sure, like from an open source project standpoint, we focus on what are the, even if you think about what we're doing with Vibrant, and when Vibrant is heavily reliant on the anchors that it's working with to make sure that they're compliant in their region, that they're doing the work that they have, and that they have the customer relationships. So we're constantly trying to improve like the flow of information in the Stellar ecosystem proposals, making sure that we're actually responding to the needs of these applications in the community with respect to that. So we're always going to be looking at it from a code-based standpoint, and like how can we make it simpler and easier, or what proposals can we put together to do that? And then obviously we spend a lot of time policy making and working with regulators and working with bodies all over the world to help to make it so that people feel that they can trust Stellar and blockchain generally.
And I don't know if you want to touch this, but there is a question about 2021 and the changing regulatory landscape as a result of the election. What changes do you see coming forward in 2021? What new challenges dealing with regulators do you foresee?
So it's funny, we keep getting this question asked, and I think the answer that the most honest answer I can give is they're in the US, like we're not just US focused, but that definitely the US election is what this is targeted on. There hasn't been a big change in the shift in the policymaking branch. So if you think about how the House and the Senate have shaken out, like there hasn't been a big shift in that. We have our challenges with respect to making sure that we do our part to educate and provide as much information as we can to all the participants and all the constituents in that branch of government to make sure that they feel comfortable with blockchain and with Stellar in particular, and with decentralized networks, because that's a big focal point for them. A lot of them want it to be more centralized, not surprisingly, because that offers more control. So we have our work cut out for us there, but that's not different than 2020. That was just there. And then from the other branch of government, which is the presidency and like the administrative body there, I feel like what we saw in the Obama administration was a really interesting focus on technology and new technologies. They actually had an office that was dedicated to this. We didn't see as much of that under Trump, but we also didn't see any harm coming to the blockchain space under the Trump administration. So I do feel like there's an opportunity to engage in these new technologies and to get that to get the Biden administration to be really focused on them. And we're going to do our part to do that. But that doesn't change that we still have the rest of the world that we need to focus on, because the US is important and we need to, I think, create some regulatory stability in the US. But our focal point is not the US. Our focal point is the global market. And we'd like to see, you know, this sort of nice regulatory engagement happen all over the world.
Jed, I have a couple questions, I think, for you that are about sort of technological stuff. What connection do you see between Stellar and Ethereum? And related, how do you feel about DeFi?
Let's see. Well, I mean, there's no direct connection between Stellar and Ethereum. I mean, are they meaning how these things will work together or how they compare against each other? I mean,
I think it's a question about how they might interact or interoperate or live side by side in the future.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, they're trying to solve very different problems. I mean, there's, you know, blockchain, all these different projects kind of get lumped together, but they're really solving very different niches and issues in the world. So, you know, Ethereum is just this very generic protocol that can kind of do any kind of computation in this decentralized way, which is great. But it also has the downsides that any computation that it does do is going to be kind of like slow and inefficient. Whereas like Stellar is like tailor purpose to do this one particular thing. So it does it really well and efficiently and quickly, namely like store representations of other kinds of value, like store different kinds of like fiat tokens or crypto tokens or whatever. And it's built to do that. So that's going to be very effective and good. But if you need to do more complex stuff, you know, like make a distributed prediction market or something like that, like Stellar's not your tool, whereas Ethereum probably is. So they just serve different purposes in the world. So I imagine they'll continue to kind of live side by side and it'll be fine. As far as DeFi, you know, that's just also just like this broad category. You know, I'm not sure what falls into that and what doesn't. I mean, I think this the craze that's kind of going on now in Ethereum land. I mean, a lot of it I'm worried is going to blow up at some point. Like, but some of it is legitimate and some of it like makes a lot of sense. And like, you know, those kind of things. We hope to like the things that make sense. We hope to like kind of like port over to the Stellar side of the world. This is kind of going back to the Turing complete scripting service thing. Like a lot of the impetus for doing that is to like provide some of these DeFi like services that people want and are asking for. So I think, you know, like most things in crypto, there's like good things and bad things in it and nonsense and stuff that makes sense. And we just kind of have to like sort through and find the things that actually work and are good for people.
So when the ecosystem has needs, problems that they want solved, what's the best way for them to convey those needs to the SDF and to the rest of the ecosystem as a whole? Like how can someone who has an issue that they want to sort of talk about, how can they bring it forward?
Yeah, well, they should email Justin.
Same thing, Justin's our guy.
You can email me at justin@stellar.org. Actually, you really can. Like it is true that not only, actually everyone here, everyone at Meridian, all very accessible, and we actually do listen and we actually do want feedback. Oftentimes when we want feedback, it's not as easy to get it as you would think, right? Like, please tell us what you're thinking at all times, because yeah, I mean, in a way, the people that use Stellar, these are the people with the most insight into what it needs to do, what it's not doing. Feedback, great.
Yeah. I mean, other ways are like, you know, there's a dev mailing list. You know, there's like an open Keybase channel that we have that's fairly active that you can post in. There's Reddit. There's lots of like avenues for you to like kind of get feedback from us and other people in the community and kind of like let us know what you're thinking. So those three are all like great ways to kind of start to build understanding of what you need. So.
And the other, when Justin said that it's sometimes hard for us to get feedback when we want it, we do put out proposals, and we don't put them out just because we think we're 100% right all the time. We actually do want feedback, and sometimes when we put them out, we don't get as much feedback as we would like to, or as we think we might. So I think just be very active, and we want to know. We're not going to always agree with you, and you might not always agree with us, but we're going to try our best to be able to get that feedback, understand it, and then try to do the right thing as a result.
Question from 2. Ripple is talking about moving their headquarters abroad due to uncertainty and regulation. Would SDF consider the same move if the US is not creating a level playing field?
So I'll start, and I'll say that I don't know why we would need to move our operations abroad. I feel like we're a Delaware corporation. We're organized under the laws of Delaware. We actually have found it fine for us to be here. I think the most important thing for us to do, again, focused on the decentralized nature of the network, is to get everyone comfortable with decentralization versus centralized authority, which frankly shouldn't be that hard, given that we're actually able to have this communication right now because we're working on a decentralized network out there in terms of the internet. So I feel like I don't see the justification for that in the work that we do. And now that doesn't mean we prioritize the US over any other market, but that doesn't feel like that we have a strong need. I don't know, Jed, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I just feel like the things that Stellar does are it was just hard to imagine any kind of US regulation that would make that impossible to do in the US. I mean, we're never in the flow of funds or anything like that. Like, there's just no, I don't know. Things would have to change pretty drastically before we would have to take such a step, I think. So.
Great. A couple of questions here that sort of relate to the upcoming roadmap. The first is about Vibrant. When do you anticipate this is from Jerome. When do you anticipate the Vibrant app completing the beta phase and going live? Are there any regulatory hurdles impeding progress?
Yes, I forget what the current timeline is for it going out of beta. I mean, it's live right now. It's just in beta, so everyone can use it if they want to check it out. But really, the next big milestone for us is getting it to a certain level of polish, and then we're going to do a lot of marketing in Argentina to like really get the word out and start to build the users. And I think, if I recall correctly, that should be end of Q1. I think is what we're pushing for. So.
Okay, I think so. And from a regulatory standpoint, we don't have regulatory hurdles in the app. There's nothing that the app itself has to be. Again, we rely on the anchors in the network. So the anchors have done a great job in terms of getting their regulatory hurdles all set up and organized around, which I think is, again, how the network should operate.
Now, there's also a question about something that was on a past roadmap, which was a project called Starlight. And the question is basically, what happened to Starlight? Is it still something that we're working on?
Yeah, we're still thinking about it. It's kind of morphed into this SideNet idea that we've been spending some time on. Yeah, it's one of these things that we need to like focus on more. And it actually the problem is like once you start thinking about it, like it pulls in a lot of things. Like even this Turing complete signing server thing, it probably has some bearing on how we would build this SideNet thing or Starlight.
Can you tell us just a little bit about what it means, like what Starlight is or was, or what SideNet is or was, what it does, what it's trying to solve for, and what we're planning to do with it?
Yeah, so the basic idea is that at some point, if you want Stellar to be this kind of global network, you start reaching these kind of like scalability bottlenecks. Because it is this public network where everyone has to see every transaction, and that just won't scale to the whole world. So you need to do something like this payment channel concept that they have in Bitcoin, which is like Lightning, where that or something equivalent to that, where basically you can move a lot of the transactions off of the public chain and only resettle back there periodically, right? And so Starlight was a payment channel version of that, and then we realized that we can kind of do something a little more generic, and that's what SideNet is. It's kind of like it's a superset of what Starlight would be, and it allows you to do a few other things, and basically it would also subsume this Turing complete signing service thing likely. So, but the essential idea is you want to be able to provide something more scalability and also more privacy for people and more bespoke operations that you can't do in the normal network. So like being able to combine kind of all three of those things and the DEX stuff, so all four of those things, it's just taking a lot of like, it's taking a lot of time to get it right. We want to just make sure the system is done right rather than just like kludge on the first thing that we kind of come to. So it's taking longer than we had hoped.
But it is going to be a focus of ours for 2021 to be working on it throughout 2021, targeting like a 2022 availability, because we're looking at use cases in the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022 that would have it. So something that's important. But it has taken on sort of a life of its own in terms of the different pieces that we think we can solve with it. So.
Right.
Question from Jeremy, Protocol 15 updates, claimable balances and sponsored reserves. They seem to be very important to the network. Was there an upcoming project that this was prioritized for?
You mean, was there a reason that we put these in?
Yeah.
They were. A lot of these things are driven by what people need to make Stellar useful in the real world. So a lot of it's driven by Vibrant and other projects out there. They're like, if we had this feature, it'd make our lives like a million times easier, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of what's driving those things. I mean, both of those just make it way easier to like have actual real world Stellar services. So.
Question for you, Danelle. How has SDF grown since you started your tenure, and how many people work at SDF now?
So when I started on my first day, we had 12, I think, or maybe 15 people that worked at SDF. And Jed always wanted to hire more and to bring in more talent. And part of my job was to be able to help to focus in on like, what do we need? And like, how do we go ahead and start the hiring? So that was in May of 2019. And today we're just at 80, I think, in terms of our full-time employees. And some of them are contractors because they're not in the United States. And which is just remarkable growth. We've grown, I think we've hired like 35 folks over the COVID period. So from February of this year through now. And so there's just been a tremendous amount of growth, real focus on making sure that everyone aligns with our values, spending a lot of time on video over the last 9 months to be like meeting people and to having them meet with like more of our internal employees as they're going through the process, just because of the need to not, the inability to meet people in person. So there's a tremendous amount of growth in terms of our talent, which is our most important asset. And then if we think about just like how we've scaled and what we've thought about internally, like we have our roadmap is a lot about, we have our same pillars that we created in 2019 around, the blockchain people know and trust, which has a lot to do with policy and marketing. And then we also have the part about it, which is usability and scalability of Stellar. And that is a lot about our technology, but also about the ecosystem and being responsive to that. And then if you think about the other parts of our network that we need to really focus on is the use cases. And so developing like the assets internally, not just in terms of the Vibrant itself, which is one of the use cases that we build, but making sure that the network actually responds to those use cases, and then having the enterprise fund so that we can invest. So all of those changes happened in 2020. So it's been a remarkable transition from like even just where we were in the end of 2019 to where we are today. So it's been amazing and like sometimes overwhelming to think about how much we've grown.
And is there going to be more clarity or just somewhere that people can sort of understand or read about or hear about our SDF's 2021 objectives?
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll give a talk on it. That'll be part of the discussion that we have at the closing, but we will publish this year. We didn't do it last year and I'm not exactly sure why, but we're going to publish this year more of like our roadmap, not just from a technical roadmap standpoint, but really focused in, we have our strategy for 2021 already that we've put together, and there's some refinements here and there, but we'll publish that so that everyone can look at it, hopefully think it's amazing, or tell us how wrong we are.
And I guess I have a question here from Raymond that feels even more forward-looking than that. Where do you see Stellar in 5 years?
So yeah, for me, like I think in 5 years' time, I would really like to see it used in some region of the world pretty widely. So, hopefully we establish this foothold in Latin America, and then it's used there for like, payments, remittances, all kinds of things. And building this thing to our ultimate vision is going to take quite a long time. But I really think that we have enough in place now. So we're in 5 years' time, we'll be used in some region, whether it's Southeast Asia or Africa or Latin America or a combination of these things where, a good number of people are actually using this day to day, and it's actually like improving people's lives. I mean, that's what we're aiming for here. So.
And I think that what we talk about internally, at least part of our strategy, again, our strategy work is to really focus on it being the global payment standard. And really what that means is it's just interoperable. It makes it so that we can interoperate, and there's just so much more usage and opportunity because of that. So if you think about how we can enhance that financial structure that's there, but then also interoperate with all the new things that are coming on, that's sort of our goal. And 5 years out, we would love to see that be the standard.
Final very important question from Sam. Any chance of a Stellar store? They would, to buy shirts and mugs, Stellar coffee. The mug that is on that desk where Jed is sitting right now has been a really popular feature. Are we thinking of pivoting to be a creator and seller of physical goods?
We haven't actually thought about using that as our revenue model and shifting over there. And I'm just going to say again that I still don't have my socks and I still don't have any of the swag that all of you out there have. So I don't know, Jed, if you got it, but somehow it missed my doorstep.
Not yet, not yet.
Well, I think that's important, right? It's important. That's who, it's servant leadership, right? It's who it's really for. It's for the people out there. They need the socks. You guys will get the socks very, very last. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
That sounds just fine. And hopefully we will have an opportunity to be able to provide even more and more swag over the years. So we'll focus on that, but probably not a store.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for your questions. And thanks so much, Danelle and Jed, for doing this. It's really great just to have an opportunity to sort of hear from and interact directly with the community. And it is really amazing that you're all here as part of Meridian. We just couldn't do this without you. In fact, there is no Stellar without you out there in the world. And that's it for the main session today at Meridian. But there is still one more session at 6 p.m. Pacific. Christine Tu, Director of Business Development at the SDF, and Joe Tussin, CEO and founder of Change, are going to talk about what it takes to build and scale a remittance business on Stellar. Now, tomorrow, we've also got another day of programming kicking off at 8 a.m. With a conversation with Danelle and Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn and partner at Greylock, about building network effects, which is something that Jed mentioned as being super critical. Makes a lot of sense. So trust me, you don't want to miss that. And thanks so much to everyone for being a part of Meridian today. Wherever you are in the world, have a good morning or a great afternoon or a decent evening, and I will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everyone.